Alrighty, looks like we are online, guys. What's going on, everybody? My name is Gabriel Quinn. I'm a concept artist, illustrator, designer, all that fun stuff. I love to draw, I love to make art, and talk to you guys about the art that I make. And today's session is a little bit different. I mean, last session was very different. We were talking about my Kickstarter game that I've been working on for a long time. The Kickstarter is not live, by the way, so you guys will know when that's happening. But today's different because I'm going to be reviewing some student work. Here I have a design that I did as a little demo piece for a for fantasy workshop I did not too long ago. And part of that workshop was that you would do a design responding to the material that I included in the class, and then I would review it here on stream. So here we are reviewing it on stream. How exciting. How cool is this? But yeah, this is like the demo piece, one of the kind of little benchmark pieces, walking people through the process of, getting to an idea. We started with a lot of diasporatic information. I don't know if we have the notes page here on this file here. No, we don't. Looks like we don't. But it was a lot of stuff. There was like 80s references and all of this random stuff we had to do. And I kind of walked through a quick sketch process to get the best bang for your buck from your sketches, and then working through that to get to a fun idea. And we did some line art, and we did a quick little design pass, and now we've got a fun little outcome of an owl guy with a tuning fork weapon. Still a lot to be done with this design, but this was kind of like an hour-long demo to show how you throw ideas around and come out with something kind of interesting. But I gave my students a couple weeks to work on a design, and they came back with some bangers. Bangers. So I'm really excited to go through some of those designs that they worked on. Before we do that, very quickly, I have to make sure that I post the link so that they can watch their own review sessions, right? Yeah, so I'm going to make this link available for people in the thing. Cool. All right. That should be good. Okay, so we're good. We're golden. We're here. All right. Oh, we got some folks in the chat. Nice. Nice. Hey, guys. What's going on? All right. You guys are here. Nice to watch the review. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. All right. Sweet. So let's get after it, guys. Oh, yeah. But before we do, double before we do, little update. We're doing a 10-week world building boot camp and mentorship program for those of you who want to do the mentorship. It is going to be an extremely rigorous program starting June 1st in a little over 2 weeks. Super exciting. We still have spots available for people. Oh, wow. We're really running low on the standard spot. Only 10 left. Yeah, you guys have really been filling this class up. It's super cool. This is a 10-week designing for world building bootcamp for artists. So if you're a concept artist or an illustrator and you love world building, this is for you. In terms of doing the assignments and getting critique, it is not for beginners. This is not a beginner's class, or this is like a high intermediate, aspiring professional level class, I would say. Starts on the 1st of June, goes to the 9th of August. And the assignments are crazy. In week 1, we're talking about characters, populations, cultures. Your assignment is going to be to design 100 characters, but you guys should read through it. It's not as crazy as it sounds, even though it is crazy. In week 2, we're talking about locations. We're going to be doing a project in week 3. You'll have a week to complete an entire project, which again is going to be doable. I'm going to teach you guys how to do it. Compelling creatures, so creature design, narrative vignettes, designing with story, because that's really what we like about world building. Doing another project, focusing on objects, props, items of importance, all of that stuff, how to tackle those things. This one's going to be a lot about research. Vocations, designing around jobs, unique jobs to your world, how to think of unique vocations for your world, clever ideas. This one's a secret. It's a secret week, I got to save some stuff, for the classes, right? And then the final thing is going to be a big project to tie it all home. I highly encourage you guys to check out this thing. We've got the structure, lectures on Monday and Wednesday, around midday on the EDT time zone. And there's going to be a big feedback session on Sunday. So for the standard admission, you'll get all 10 weeks of lectures, so 20 lectures total, and you can sit in all the mentorship, or you can sit in on all of the critique stuff. If you want formal critique, and a one-on-one session every week for this class. You can get the mentorship spot as well. But more importantly, well, not more importantly, this is a crazy opportunity, but also starting tomorrow, we still have a couple spots left for the free intro to world building for artists, which is starting tomorrow. So tomorrow and Sunday, you guys can sit in on this this completely free intro to world building workshop. So this is kind of like a preface for this, just so I don't have to cover this material during the 10 weeks. I decided to do it for free for you guys because I know a lot of people want to get started with world building. So it's a great way to just get started. All links to that are in the description. I'll put the link right here into the chat so you guys can immediately click it, I guess. And I'll put it in the comments below so you guys can see. And I'll put the big link to this one here as well. Okay. And then on the Gumroad, you can also check out some cool other goodies. I've got my brush pack there. You can see the recordings for the last free workshop we did, the shape design workshop, which is I think a good one. And you can check out what's online and what's happening now with these two upcoming classes. So, okay, we are popping off. Enough of that. Enough. It's time. Here we are. Let's look at some student work. Blammo. So good. Oh my gosh. You guys really popped off, I gotta say. Really impressed with the caliber of work you guys submitted. Really, really happy that you guys dived in so deep to some of this stuff. So I'll quickly scroll through some of the submissions just on the front so you guys can see. We have submission from Luke, from Rafe, from Oro, from Ember, from May, from Bards, from Salem, from Alex, and from Finn. So we're gonna do a detailed critique of all of this, starting off with Luke here. So a lot of what we talked about in the Designing for Fantasy workshop was, number one, research and kind of grounding your design in like referencing a particular time period, referencing a particular culture that is adjacent or within the kind of fantasy scope. And that the designs that you're kind of focusing on, you want it to feel very believable, but have that capacity to stretch the whimsy and kind of have fun there. So this design, I think, really embodies that. We have a sharpshooter character with this really beautiful dress, this kind of lacy dress motif. I like the presentation of the big type and then the kind of cursive type here, Grand Railway Ladybird. I like that. It's a fun motif. I think one thing you can think about, Luke, for presentation in the future is, number one, maybe like reconsidering the a sans serif font. Maybe you want something, you know, I'm not saying a sans serif is like not the move, but that a sans serif here, it's kind of graphic design wise a little scrunched, maybe just a hair, just a little bit scrunched. So maybe exploring some fonts could be good. So we have some information here, some lore information. Heir to one of the great engines. I love that like engines are I can already tell that's like a unique word in this world, which is kind of sick. Ladybird is composed and observant markswoman. However, under her confident demeanor is a desire to embody the poise and elegance of her mother, and fear that she won't live up to her legacy. So you have kind of this idea of legacy, you have idea of this character who carries a lot of weight on her, so there's kind of this sort of somberness there that I can see in the character, which is cool. While on a diplomatic mission to a neighboring railway, an ambush by rival engines strands her in the eastern frontier, forced to rely on a young freight hopper to survive. So I like the thesis statement, although I wish I had visual information to corroborate with the thesis statement. I like it as kind of a premise to the world, but yeah, maybe we could think about structuring that a little bit differently. Just like graphic design wise, one thing we could think about is taking something like this, because I do like this presentation of how you have it. Let's just make a white layer behind. But giving the design a little bit of room to breathe could be good. So, you know, bringing the text over a little bit, maybe letting it be centered slightly, you know, in this space. This could be a good move, you know, giving your design a little bit of room to breathe on the page. Another thing which I always do I try to always do whenever I have type behind a character is, let's see, we have some noise here. Yeah, got some selections. One thing we could try is grabbing a soft brush and just hitting it with a very, very slight gradient kind of behind, just to sort of allow the face to come forward. Not a necessity, but something that you could employ here to increase the depth. You don't want to have like competing areas of contrast. Also, the rim light along the top here, along the hair, it does sort of take away from the silhouette. And this is mostly like presentation notes. So bringing it more of like a more sharp rim light could help you maintain that strong silhouette there for the future, potentially. So. Another thing when it comes to presentation is, I'm going to talk about this a lot today, but values are unbelievably important. And here, I love the design. I love your design so much. It's got so much poise, elegance, and great just illustration, super tight technical illustration. But when I go black and white, you know, you can kind of see that certain elements are really taking away. And even something like this flower on the right here, it is kind of taking away from the design. If we punch that back even just a little bit with like a 50% of white on, or the background value, which is white, onto that, and maybe up here or something, it really takes the pressure off of that motif. Like it really takes the pressure off. A second thing we could do is we could hit it again with another 50%, so it adds up to about 75%. I have my brush at 50% opacity. And you can see now that your character is the main character here. It's the main focus of the page. And if we snap back to just regular view, you can see that it's really strong now, and it's very centered in the page, whereas before it was this was really competing with the silhouette of the character. So we want to knock that back, have your character really front and center. So now let's talk about design. In terms of design, your presentation's great. You know, I love the pose is telling a story, the expression is telling a story, the design of the outfit is telling a story. That kind of pink lace is very fun. So I love all of those elements. One thing you could explore, and again, this is like an exploration thing you could try, is you could, for instance, you have a shadow already for where the legs are in this piece. So you could, in theory, use this same idea of this kind of shadow, and we could remove the selection of these guys. I'm trying to be very kind of particular with how I'm selecting this so that I'm doing this correctly, although it is hard making these selections and figuring this out on the fly, but it's all part of the fun, right? So one thing you could do, we're going to use a multiply layer for this. Very simple kind of technique here is we have our selection. I'm just going to add some value back here. It just kind of adds that back rank of shadow. It doesn't have to be this dark at all. You can have it be like very light, something like a whatever percent, and probably honestly less saturated. It's a little bit intense in terms of its saturation, but something that lets us kind of complete this view of the character could be nice. You don't have to have it for the whole thing. You can just kind of indicate it on the bottom here with the silhouette and then fade it up with a soft brush. So something like that could help with the feeling of the character being in space. And then after you do that, maybe you want to reconsider how forward the rest of the dress is coming forward. You know, we could take something like this and knock it forward a little bit. But again, these are all matters of taste and how you want to be approaching these designs. But I really do like this outcome. So that's another thing that you could do just in terms of the presentation. Your submission is really strong. There's not a lot to talk about here in terms of like fixing the quote design. There are a few things just with like rendering and values that we could talk about very briefly. Namely being, something like this could be like an easier to read silhouette because it kind of matches the overall perspective a little bit more than the super long train. But again, it all matters of taste, right? So for the actual dress itself, you were really detailed with the lace work here. And one thing that we went over a lot of work that had a ton of like really strong detail. And I can tell you really put that into practice here, this is a really, really strong illustration. The forms are feeling really great. Like here, for instance, like this kind of cylinder on the arm is really great. The parts that are flat and graphic, but still retain their form. You're including great anatomy information, like the little crease in the armpit here, just to add that extra oomph. One thing you could do is, even though you have your great 2-value spread of, you have your kind of base value and your highlight rim light value, you can still in a few areas add a little bit of like that kind of crisp shadow in a couple of areas. Just adding a little bit of mass to some of these things increases the depth just like a tiny bit, and only in select areas. One of those areas that I think it would actually be really effective in to add that second value, that shadow value, is around the pleats of this dress. So for instance here, if we darken some of these areas with these pleats, because you have such intense rim light defining the form, I feel like it could be great to continue defining that form along the whole dress, perhaps. Something like this really adds to that chunky 3D pushed, punched kind of feel. And what's cool about illustration in particular, or how you're presenting this stuff, is you don't necessarily have to be so in like a all-inclusive of your indications of form. You can in some ways be like emphasizing certain areas more than others. Like for instance here, we're emphasizing the pleats, but we might not like emphasize all of the forms of the back. Like we might not drop this into a gradient or do other things where we could have in theory. So indicating those pleats a little bit more just adds some zhuzh. Adds a little bit of zhuzh. Just a hair. Just a tad, just a tinge of the zhuzh. And when you zoom out, you can already see that it feels so much more, it has so much body. It feels really cool. Robert Tonowim says she needs shoulder blades. You know, yeah, you'd think. I mean, for a piece like this, it's actually not necessarily the case that they would need to indicate all that anatomy. You can tell they're going very stylized with the facial features, mostly focusing on just the silhouette for all the indications of form, and then taking, you know, certain specific motifs, but reducing detail for the most part on a lot of the design. Could there be an indication of like a spine, like maybe a slight crease? Yeah, it could be good to have a slight crease on the back just to show that there is some kind of anatomy happening there, but it doesn't strike me as needing that in particular. But it could. It could be that maybe there just needs to be a slightly bit more overlap on the shoulder here. And another thing is when you're tracking form across a subject, something like this where we have the back, which is centered, it's very important. And also because the head is turning over to the side and we know the center of the back is running up the side here, I think that something like this little lace thing, it just being off by a tiny bit can really break the flow of the form. So something like this, I would actually move over a slight bit. I would move this over a hair. I would move it to like here. I know it seems like a tiny nitpick, but you know, all these things add up, certainly. Certainly. Yeah. Those are the main things I'm seeing just in terms of the rendering and placement just on the body and whatnot. Another thing is that when you're doing this very graphic approach and you have these really strong shapes and really strong lines, in certain areas you can really knock back some of the lines. Like you can lighten the lines. For instance, on the lace, you can really just push those lines back if you want to. You can push these lines back and it still retains its shape and its detail, but it allows that kind of white disc shape to exist just mostly as a graphic, like a really nice appealing graphic shape, and the lines aren't pulling you in with so much detail. Robert says it's great work. I totally manage this character. Dude, so true. So true. So that's pretty sick. Certain lines, like silhouette lines, I like them being very dark. When it comes to these cross contour lines, these are areas where I think you can maybe knock them back a little bit. And you'll be surprised at knocking back some of these very dark lines, how it really actually helps the design just feel more, quote, realistic. Even though you're not necessarily going for a realistic look with a piece this graphic, it can still really add. And the same is true for these pleat lines. You can knock these back a little bit too, have them not be as present or not be as like loud or black in particular. And again, kind of see your design through to its fullest. Now, zooming in. This is something that I think I see a lot in particularly intermediate artist work, where along the edges of certain designs, and I'll take out over my paint over as you can see, along the edges of designs, the focus and the attention to detail around the edge lines that you're drawing can potentially drop a little bit. And I know we're mostly critiquing design here and not necessarily fixating too much on the illustration or the finish, but it's important to acknowledge that, for instance here, the line that makes up this main shape that's wrapping around is inconsistent in its width. Over here it's thicker, here it's thinner, and it's not due to overlap of the form here. That's not shown to be the case here. So it's just a matter of a little bit of an incorrect drawing and some of the lines being a little bit wobbly. If you have a really hard time drawing on glass, which I know a lot of people do, you could always turn on smoothing to like 5%, 10%, and you can really get around that. But also just kind of repetition can help a ton as well. But those things really add up. Like they add up really quick in terms of believability when you have something that's just a little bit off, like the width of this. And again, slightly bit of a nitpick, but so much of this drawing is so tight. Like the face is so tight, and the lace work is so tight. You're so clear and consistent with stuff over here. When I see something like this black edge kind of fall off, makes me sad because it's like when you zoom out, you do feel it. You do feel that a little bit, especially when it's black and it's such a clear graphic element of the piece. You do feel it. So design wise, that's something I would focus on, is like getting those things feeling correct, like very correct. That's an important element to acknowledge. Now, jumping back in with some of the things we were talking about in terms of design, I do like the flower on the face here. This is, however, an opportunity where I think you could have potentially taken a route where you're exploring more of a 3/4 design. The flower is facing more in this direction and receding back behind the ear here, and you have another flower going back in maybe a different direction. You could have potentially had a lot of fun with that. Again, bit of a nitpick, not super, necessary, but it does flatten the piece when you have such great form in other areas, and then something like this, which is a big flourish around the face, which is the focal point, kind of becoming a little bit flat. Also, you gave such a strong submission, like I gotta find something to talk about, right? The last thing, and I think the most important thing with this piece in particular, is going to be the gun. So the gun looks beautiful. And I can tell you did your research. This is a super compelling, accurate, like flintlock pistol. The grip looks good. The filigree looks good. The bolt placement looks good. I can really tell that you did your homework on this. But it does kinda a little bit, it does a little bit kind of break continuity with the overall elegance of the character, especially because you literally mentioned elegance in the actual design notes or the actual description here. The gun itself is elegant, but the pairing it with this very, I'll say dainty, because this character is kind of dainty, very kind of dainty character who's very, in this beautiful dress and all that stuff. So when you have something like a pistol, we can think about dramatizing it a little bit, because we do have creative license, right? This is fiction. This is fantasy fiction. So what we can do is we can take something like this and we can say, how do we make something like this just a little bit more elegant, let's say? Well, I like the handle. The handle looks gorgeous. I think it's really, really cool. One thing we could do, in particular with the handle, is we could potentially just pinch its proportions a little bit, make it even more daintier. We could grab the butt of the pistol here. We We can move it up slightly, just making it a little bit smaller. Yeah. And then pinching it in a little bit, making it just a little bit more dainty. And that's honestly a debatable decision if that was correct or incorrect. But bringing the barrel a little bit more narrow, and I know this is potentially breaking some rules of how the actual gun was in that historical era, but something like that does like fit the character potentially a little bit more aesthetically here, which when you're designing for something like fantasy in the world of giant hammers and the world of giant axes and wizards and magic and all of that stuff, when you're going for something a little bit more, engine punk, kind of steampunk style, something like this is an okay adjustment when you're making these changes potentially. So that's the kind of vibe. Or that's something to consider, is you can dramatize things to make it fit. But I love the filigree in the design that you had here. It's looking really, really cool. You could even, consider, honestly, if you were going to go for the larger pistol, another solution to that would be taking the existing prop and then taking the element that would make it, quote, more elegant and elongating that. Like you could make the barrel longer, and then you could pinch the side here. So you actually maybe could keep this whole silhouette that you already had, but elongate it a little bit. So one is kind of pulling back on your existing design, and one is pushing your existing design. Both solutions, I think, achieve a similar purpose. Another thing is line of sight. This is a gesture note. If you have a sharpshooting character and you have them with the gun in their hand, you really want that shoulder pop, eye down the barrel kind of look. You want that over the shoulder, looking down the barrel of the gun, maybe just completely straight ahead or something, where you can have that look. I know they're kind of a somber character, but when you have that sharpshooting vibe, you really want that rule of cool there. Maybe even pushing the eyebrow a little lower for determination, and maybe adding some white under the eye for them kind of more looking up. And that's just another option you could go for, not necessarily something you have to go for. It's an option you could go for. So those are the main things that I would really focus on with this design in particular. Those are the elements that I think are really important. Here's the kind of quick paint over so you can see. And the changes honestly are not that dramatic in terms of the design. Mostly we just kind of took a look at the dress lying in space, focusing on completing the silhouette of how the dress is hanging, taking a look at the gun. We had two options for the gun. One was much more in alignment with making the design a little bit smaller, and one was kind of elongating the design and thinking about that gesture a bit more, which maybe this is actually feeling a little bit better. When I squint, this one feels better. The longer version feels a little bit nicer. So that's kind of the main notes there. But let's take a look at your work. So again, the presentation, I think, is something you could take a second look at and like really take a second look at it. So when it comes to your character on the page, I think you should try and always go for some kind of ratio of 80-20 or like 70-30, which means you want your character to have, your subject to have quite an intense presence on the page, either like that 70% of the page or that 30% of the page. Right now, it feels like it's not taking up quite enough room. So even if I grabbed your character, if I took all my notes away and I just grabbed your character, bam, 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 and I just made them a little bit bigger, just a hair bigger on the page, the overall composition of this kind of almost square 4:3 looks like ratio thing, it feels a little bit better on the page. So don't be afraid to really put your character on the page in a cool way, and really go for it. But honestly, Luke, I love this. This is a really interesting design. Again, looking at your follow-up work, your process work, something like this, when it's all lines, it can kind of sort of feel a little empty in a way. One thing you could consider is just taking this same approach here of the character and having them here, but just at a lower opacity. So you still have the the color information, and so they feel a little bit more grounded on the page. So we have Marigold talking about the significance of the flower. Love that. Expression and hair, contrast with the typical expectations for a princess or diplomat, along with the outfit reinforcements of these stereotypes. Yeah, so like they're in contrast to how they look, which again, I love. This is cool. Lace ornamentation looks sick, looks super dope. Ooh, honestly, a white flower that kind of almost looked like the lace could have been sick. Could have been dope. Flintlock pistol based on historical firearm. Yep, I could totally tell. Give time period, ornate details to display royal status. I like it. I like it. I love it. You know, I really, really like it. I think just finagling with the silhouette so it feels a little more on the elegant side. Not just elegant filigree, but elegant design overall. Ladybug theme. Voracious garden predator. Oh, interesting. You know, I didn't necessarily feel the ladybug theme with this one. The ladybug theme. I mean, I like the idea of it. Now that you're saying it, I like the idea of it, but I don't think I really saw it in particular with this. But that's okay. You know, it could be something that was an inspiration for you. And even though it's not completely readable in the final design, like it's still part of the process for you, which is nice. Corset and dress. A ladybird is another name for a ladybug. Oh, so true. Corset and dress, designed after a ladybug with 7 buttons on each shell. Nice. Translucent fabric on the dress represents its wings, also provides setting and time context. Yeah, I mean, the design is great. Love the corset, love the pleats, love the kind of shelling sort of patterns. It's looking dope. Yeah, really, really liking it. It's looking sick. Yeah, I love this kind of dainty hand here with a stern expression. Yeah, you're thinking in all the right ways. Adding interest, adding focus, strong narrative focus, clear indications of who the character is. We talked a lot in the workshop about like the primary, secondary, and tertiary read. The primary read being like what is happening, and it's like a dainty lady with a gun. The secondary read is like, oh, it's like a very fancy lady. She has a fancy gun, and she has some kind of sick and twisted purpose. And then that like final read sort of being the narrative of everything kind of coming through. But yeah, great work, Luke. Nothing more to say about this one. Good stuff. Keep going. Hell yeah. All right, next up we have Rafe's design. Okay, we have a very, very classic fantasy warrior. Instantly, I feel like this is a desert character. Like instantly, I'm like, this is a desert warrior. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And looking through, the immediate thing that I notice about this is that there's these like antennae on the head. There's some kind of machinery here with like a gauge, and there's tubes on the helmet connecting around these different areas. So I'm immediately getting the sense that there's some kind of technology happening here, and I love that combination of the technology with this like rugged desert warrior. Like I like that. I like that he's a rugged warrior, but there's this technological element. Obviously my mind goes to Dune immediately in terms of like surviving the desert and all of that stuff with the kind of hand-to-hand combat that they have. So in terms of materials stuff, we looked a lot at Evan and Munson's work for reference, and I can tell you were really strongly referencing that, and it looks really, really clear and clean. All the elements here are super, super clear. You have all the leather pleats, the leather padding, and all of that stuff along the kind of, you have a clear belt buckle design with a cool sigil on it. Some cool technology wraps around the shoes. The shoes make sense. You know, there's wraps around and lacing. So you're very grounded with your thinking here, which is great. For critique for this one, there's a few elements that I want to cover, you know, again, one being tracking form in particular. So the best way to just check your forms at any point or any time is to flip your canvas back and forth. So here, as we're like flipping canvas back and forth, or as we just kind of look at it here, there's a few things that kind of stand out immediately. At least for me, when I'm looking at it. Number one is that some of the indications of form are perhaps not showing what you want them to show, you know, immediately. So for instance, we can start to critique here. This section here of the body and how the torso is mapped it feels extremely shallow. The torso feels very, very shallow. And the tracking of form on the face is a little bit flattened potentially. So that kind of wide Dorito body shape is great. It's like really, really great for these kind of designs, for these kind of heroic character designs, which is awesome. And again, this is another area that I see a lot of intermediate or aspiring professionals start to have some issues, is particularly around these edges and these areas for the design where it's not giving you enough follow through to tell you about the complete form. So what do I mean by the complete form? It's like you know it's curved because the line is curved here, right? But another thing that's curved is just kind of this, like that's a curved shape. So it could just be that. It could be a slight curve on a flat shape. You don't know what's on the other side. But when you take something like this cuff here and you actually show it fully wrapping around and you show that top side fully wrapping around, that's when you get that complete idea that there is width and thickness to the different elements. And the same is true for all areas of your design. Showing that wraparound follow through, that little edge area is so important, especially for belts, for all kind of things like that. Another thing is that, again, tracking the forms across the body when you have patterns, patterns are the best way to show form because they totally adhere to form as well. This is also the kind of thing that you have a really hard time with when you're sort of tunnel visioned. When you're tunnel visioned on a design, you've been working on it for a long time, it's super hard to remember to like track your forms and all that stuff. But for the chest, for instance, I know it kind of comes out to the collarbone and it drops straight down, which isn't like a terrible thing. Like sometimes you do have a kind of a flat sort of view, but if we were to sort of take a more classically heroic approach, we might take this seam line and have it come out a little bit and then come down. And same with these padded rivet kind of area things up here, these padding areas, is we have these lines at a bit more of a slant here. So it's following these forms across, and that gives you that broader chest. This can come out a little bit and come back in, maybe not as extreme. So you can already see just by doing that, we're pushing the chest out and forward, right? We're pushing the chest out, forward, down. So using these plates, you are showing the form. And the same is true over here. You can have it kind of come out and around. And then as it gets closer, you can have them angled in a little bit. And as you're turning, it could be flat all along the front side, but then as it starts to curve around the body, it curves around towards the end. So in these areas back here, like it could start to curve. And those indications of form are, again, those are the things that sell the kind of mass of the character. So that's something I would consider for the future when you're mapping out in your kind of line art phase before you go to color, or as you're mapping out your line art, just make sure you're checking your forms and you have all the volumes that you want. Because that's something that really feels great when there's really nice volume to a piece. It feels really, really great, especially when you're doing costumed characters like this that have a lot of detail and a lot of different elements. Using those details and patterns, what's better than that? Not much, I'll tell you. So then in that same kind of thinking, being sure about something like your perspective motifs and what angle things are at is also very important too. Like here with this machine, we see that there's a clear indication that we like see the bottom of this. And so it's kind of tilted up. But if that's tilted up, then you would probably mostly see the bottom of this kind of thing here. You wouldn't necessarily see the top as much. And for this cool symbolic thing here, you would maybe see the bottom of this as it kind of wraps around. And this would kind of go above in that way. So everything would skew in that direction where you would be mostly looking at the bottom of that object because it's a rigid object. So if it's turned up a little bit, you see the underside of everything, right? But then if you wanted to flatten that and have it be more head on, kind of, again, reducing that that form there so it's more flat to the body could be the way to go if you wanted it, again, to be more flat to the body. So little form things like that are great to check on and look. I could kind of skate around and do that same thing to the whole design, but I'd rather kind of move on to the second thing that I wanted to talk about, which for this design in particular would be values. Values are, again, the single most important thing in a piece. And again, great ways to check your values is to check the black and white. And some great indications of value here, or some great value blocks that are distinct, are things like the plates along the shoulder. This is great use of value. Same thing on the other side, great use of value here. The sleeves being a different value to the leather is great to create that visual difference. Sometimes you want visual homogeneity, like with the leathers in the center. You don't want these to be too different in value because you want the whole thing to read as one shape. But when you want distinctions in different areas and different elements, then to be distinct, then you use value most often to indicate those changes or those kind of graphic shapes. The pattern down here looks really nice with these values. So what I'm noticing here is there's kind of some opportunity for some other cool elements of filigree. Like if we have this motif of the scale mail up here, you know, what's to stop us from trying that at the base of the cuirass here? Like that could be a cool separation of the top and bottom. If that feels too truncated or too 50-50, you could think about having those motifs for the bottom of this design as it transitions to the rest of the piece. And you can consider doing a very thin line across as a nod to that. And then having those little elements here. And then we have the kind of shiny bits there. So you can see how just that, for all of a sudden, it really somehow ties the piece together, you know, and it's just a couple little tiny marks. So values really help to block out sections of a design, block out shapes, all that stuff. What I'm most concerned about is the values around the head and the face, because the head and the face should, and I say should very loosely, should be the most high contrast, because that's usually where you want to look. You want the viewer to look at the face of the character. That's like one of the most important areas that you say so much about the design, so much about who the character is. So what are some areas that have inherent high contrast? Inherent high contrast is usually around the eyes, because you have these dark eyelashes around the eyes. You have these light whites of the eyes. That adds a ton of contrast to the character. So that's just a natural way to get that contrast. Another thing is having something like darker eyebrows. Darker eyebrows add a lot more contrast. And then taking elements like, if this is your skin tone value, this gray, and your helmet value is pretty much the exact same gray, it's going to feel, again, like pretty darn flat. So there's two ways to go here, two things we can try. One is we can try going like much lighter in theory. So we could take something like this helmet and we could consider going more towards like a lighter gray or like an off-white design, seeing how we like that. Does that look how we want it to look? Is that framing the face in the way that we like? Maybe we're just trying it for now. You know, that looks pretty cool, but it kind of alienates the rest of the design in a way. So it's kind of maybe not so good. So instead, we want to think about potentially bringing it a couple steps darker, which is a lot easier to do and a lot more effective in my opinion. And it ties into the rest of the design, and I like it. It's cool. Dark around the face is always a great motif. So if we just take everything a step darker, the face pops a lot more just immediately, which is nice. It also allows these tube elements to pop as well. For these cups around the ears, honestly, I'm tempted to go very dark with this just to see how that looks. Yeah, kind of liking that. Kind of liking how dark those are. Reminds me a lot of kind of pilot gear and whatnot. Looks kind of sick. We can quickly kind of lightly paint in sort of a specular highlight here in the neutral gray of maybe where it would be receiving light from an alternate light source. Towards the top too, maybe a little bit, but the rest being quite dark. That's looking pretty good, looking pretty interesting. We can take the highlight value of this whole thing, or first we redefine the shadow values, make it darker around the face, dark around the edges, add in some kind of wrinkles and whatnot. So that's looking a little bit more like the face is popping slightly. We would have to bring in those rim light elements again on some of these areas. And we can be very aggressive with our lights and shadows. So another thing I want to talk about here is being aggressive with lights and shadows. But for now, bringing it back into color, just with those kind of little value changes, you can see it adds a lot more kind of nice contrast to the piece. Yeah. Yeah. So many things to discuss. Another thing is that the sword has a huge opportunity here to be a very strong, bold graphic shape. And you kind of have two elements. You have a very, very generic sword handle, and you have a very strange looking blade. So you have two things that are sort of in opposition because almost nothing in the design references that kind of 17th century longsword handle design. Like nothing references anything close to that era. You could actually go a completely different direction with the sword entirely. Like you don't have to do a longsword handle. You can do something completely different. Also, side note, when you're doing this kind of blocking of value, this is very efficient and you did this really well, kind of having those dark edges, showing the light part, doing the highest highlight, coming in with just that same sort of shadow value, pick the same shadow value, just showing that little indication of form of how these are overlapping each other adds so much. When you kind of zoom out, it adds so much mass to the piece. It's like such a great hack. It's such a cool thing. Or even taking that same edge and having it bleed in across other areas that are catching that light source, not just along the pivot. It's a great way to show. That's like easy way to render something really fast and really well is that little indication there. But yeah, so the sword, I almost want the sword to be referencing the kind of technology and stuff you have going on. Like, because you have such a cool tubular, strange design, I almost wonder if you want to do something kind of similar on the blade somehow. Like you have some kind of wrapping around element or something where you have like some kind of cool, weird snake-like pattern across the form, like before it goes into a blade, or like something like that. Who knows? But I think you have a lot more leeway with this than maybe perhaps you think. And something like the longsword blade might make it feel more jarring and more foreign than it actually maybe should. Overall, I made this way too late. Yeah. To the point where, yeah, the piece might feel even more jarring. You can still have it footed by this brass tone. Brass is a great grounding, like this kind of brassy tone is a great grounding material to kind of tie everything together. Like using that brass in different areas is a great way to like tie in all those elements, which is great. You could even consider putting those kind of brass studs along the bottom of the cuirass here. Could be good, potentially. So yeah, something like this kind of strangeness could be really nice for this piece, for like the guard of the sword, or something kind of cool, like that, where it flows in. And then the rest of the blade itself, I think, should be probably a lot lighter. And if it goes dark, it should probably go a lot darker. Like either you want to catch a dark shadow with the blade, or you want it to be like a lot lighter. Because it's metal, dude. Metal is like a cool pop color. You don't want your metal to feel super dull and kind of boring and weird. You want it to feel cool and gling and like sick. So if you have like a much stronger value for the sword, either for the overall silhouette or just for certain sections or something, you can get a really cool result. I always like swords to be lighter rather than darker, unless the composition is inherently really light. But if the composition is inherently dark, which this is, that's a very dark midtone for the background. I think having something a little bit lighter for the blade could be good. Potentially. So what else to say about this cool design? Again, I love the motifs you have for the blade, the character, the cool technology, the weird stuff. I don't really have any notes for that, to be honest. Like I don't have notes for the overall kind of coolness of the design. I really like it. I like that you're doing all these different straps, these different elements. I mean, like, you know, when you're painting something out, the scratchier your line work around areas that are wanting a higher degree of clarity, the less kind of believability you might get from the audience. Like using a very rough pencil brush for some of these highlights, it might just not be the move with the style. But you know, it's something that you could think about for your work. You know, like when you're going to final illustration, having really sketchy pencil marks is fine if you paint it out. If you're focusing mostly on shape and silhouette, those sketchy pencil marks are fine as line work and all of that stuff. But when you're wanting like a high degree of fidelity for your piece, it could end up taking away a little bit. But yeah, I like this guy. This guy rules. I think it's possible you could be more aggressive with your highlights and your shadows for some of these areas, like especially with cloth in particular. When it comes to wrinkles, the airbrush doesn't really want to work. Like the airbrush works on a big kind of area that's not doesn't have any wrinkles or folds. But when you have wrinkles and folds, the airbrush really does not really, it doesn't want to cooperate as much. Also, apologies if my voice sounds weird, guys. I'm getting over a cold, which I really wanted it to be over by the time I started the workshop tomorrow, but we're gonna have to grin and bear it. But you can see something like this, just being a bit more decisive about our shadows. It just allows us to relax about the cloth. Like it's like, oh yeah, the cloth is just making these big chunky fold shapes. You know, that's what it's doing. It allows us to relax and not be so stressed out about the cloth. You know, otherwise you're just gonna be stressed out about it. So there you go. But yeah, that's one thing to take into consideration. And then for something like leather, believe it or not, a lot of leather is more reflective than you think. So you can have a ton of fun with leather. So if we kind of make these all kind of an even value here, you can take this and it could be brought to quite a dark value by easing it into quite a dark value over here. Same thing on this side. You can ease it into quite a dark value. And what's cool about leather as well is that it oftentimes reflects the light of the sky or whatever the light source is. Here we have a nice, bright, cool backlight. So we can use that as our backlight. And again, we can ease it into that kind of bright, chunky light towards the back. And you might think like, oh, this doesn't look realistic. This is way too crazy. But then when you zoom out, it looks kind of fine, you know, as long as you're showing the edges. So like the bevels of these, again, just like we did with the sword down here where certain elements are facing the light, here these would be catching that rim light, that backlight too. Gling, 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 gling. And there you have a super tight design. You could also have that like what's it called, kind of bounce light, reflected. It's all bounce or reflected light. All light is reflected and bounced and all that stuff, but still, like, you can have that ease up towards the front. So you have that core of the dark shadow and then eases up towards the front a little bit. And you have some cool kind of chunky rendering for your leather. And if you use that across the board, you get that really nice kind of shiny look. That only works with more of the polished leathers. More matte leathers are still going to reflect light, much like you had before, but not so much in the future. Also, when you're doing designs like this, I keep saying that, when you're doing designs like this, but when you are doing designs like this, you can be very aggressive with your shadows that are in areas where there is no light. So like around the padding here, you can literally bring these little sections to black. Or an off black, but you know, you can bring these sections to black because no light is getting in here in between this padding and these little areas. You can even do some kind of drop shadow here and there where you accentuate some of these shadows. Same with the kind of crevice back here and those areas. You can be really aggressive with some of those. And here you'd think there'd be a bigger shadow, but actually cloth usually bubbles up to meet certain elements. So you can kind of have the cloth actually come up pretty close on some of these bracelet elements and it still looks realistic. But yeah, going to black for some of these shadows increases the feeling of depth, increases the realism, because that is just what would happen in those areas where no light can reach. It's that simple. No light can reach it. Those are some broad critiques for this. I think I honestly don't even know if I would touch this again if I were you. Like, I might just do a new design, just like keep having fun and keep trying new stuff. Like, I'm actually not a huge, go back and fix it guy, to be honest, which I know sounds maybe kind of crazy, but it really is, I think, good to just keep moving forward a lot of the time. Here, I just darkened that terminator of the light and shadow there, and you can bring it a little bit lighter as you ease back over to the edge. And again, just getting that nice kind of shiny material for the leather. It's really nice dynamic rendering. And same with the cloth down here. Just being a bit more punchy with the shadows of the cloth. A little more back and forth. Because usually with the cloth, you have your two values. You figure out what those two values are, the light and the shadow, and you can kind of dance back and forth and maxing out those forms. Okay. Yeah, and if you have rim light, like something like this over here, this also is flattening if it only touches the back, because it's rim light. Anything that its rim is facing that direction would catch the light. If you bring that rim light forward, you're also helping this form feel round. So if you have the rim light catching on these areas as they kind of ease in, you are bringing those areas into the form. So you're helping sell the mass of the character as it's turning around, right? That helps to give you that sense that it's turning around to face that backlight. That also kind of helps to add that roundness and that mass we were talking about. It's both in the lines and also in the light. Okay. Oh yeah, we want to look at the sketches. So your sketches I love. Like, I think these sketches are great. I actually am not a big numbers guy. I don't necessarily like putting numbers to my sketches, mostly because it is so, this is going to sound weird, but it's so loud on the page that it can almost take away from what's actually going on with the design. You're like, this is number 8. And like, you're just looking at it and you're like, this is number 8. And you're not thinking about it like, who is this guy? You're thinking that's number 8. And you're thinking in your head, oh, is number 8 cool? Well, I don't know. If number 8 is next to these two guys, because they're so close together, who knows if it's actually cool or not. It's this thing, where that comparison adds context, takes away context. The comparison and contrast are huge definers of whether something is cool or not cool. Like, you could have a bunch of crazy League of Legends characters or something, and you could have a bunch of crazy League of Legends characters, and then if you have a character that's just like a black kind of cloak character, let's say, something kind of simple, and the black cloak character sort of looks at you with these kind of interesting eyes, you know what I mean? It could be that next to a bunch of League of Legends characters, this guy doesn't feel very cool, But if you take this sort of character and you put them next to some, like kids with flashlights, you know what I mean? If you put them next to some kids where they're like, oh, what's going on? Guys, what's around the corner? They got their big cartoonish flashlight. They're like holding it with their little hand. They're like, what's going on here? They're holding it with two hands because their hands are that tiny because they're little tiny little baby kids. They're like, whoa, what's over there? They got their big backpack that's like bigger than them. Something like that. If you put this villain in this world with these kids, all of a sudden this villain's feeling pretty scary and pretty sick. It's maybe the perfect villain for this story, maybe. So contrast is huge. And when you're doing concept pages, I don't know, you can just forget everything I just said if you want to, but I personally don't number things, and I don't think it's actually that productive, to be honest, because, if someone's like, oh, I like number 10, it's like, don't say that. Say the full thing. Ooh, I like the one with all the paneling and the scale mail and the headphone things. He's so sick, like, oh, that's so cool. You have to describe what's cool about it, I like that a lot more, personally. In terms of iterations and stuff, if this is happening sequentially, which I feel like it is, I can really feel you going from the very, very first read of kind of scribble indication to much more descriptive reads towards the end. So even just in these 10 drawings, I can see you really developing your confidence here, which is great. And additionally to this, to all of this, this proves the theory of like volume, where if you want to get to good ideas, just be fearless and jump in. Your first idea, you don't have to show anyone that first idea. You don't even have to show yourself. You can forget that you ever did it, and you probably will. But doing a ton of designs is a great way to just get yourself like warmed up. People say like you get warmed up. I don't know if I like the term warmed up, to be honest. I don't know if that's like a thing I like, but it gets you warmed up. So while we're using it. But yeah, I like these iterations and these designs. They're cool. The one thing that I think is missing here a little bit is I can tell now I can tell this. I can tell you jumped the gun on this. Like I could tell you didn't really write things out and actually think through the idea and give yourself enough information to really start. I think you've kind of got like desert explorer, nomadic warrior guy. And probably even off of this, when you were finishing the drawing and pushing the design, you're like, I better give him a sword. Like that's probably your order of I'm guessing that's your order of operations. And I think that's the most common approach that people have to this kind of stuff. And it's the approach that the reason why I feel like I know that about your process here is because that's really was my process in large part for a long time, and still is sometimes. Guys, come on, I'm only human. Come on, yeah. But when you're wanting to produce like a real design, you're not like fishing for a good drawing. You're not just trying to go, oh, let's see if I can make a cool thing. You're really sitting down and saying, what would be a good idea? How can I express this idea well? When you do that and you sit down, you give yourself the space and time, you're able to create a very, very strong foundation, and you're giving yourself a lot of resources. It's like you're giving yourself, you're finding, and you're when you're a kid and you're making a Lego spaceship or something like that, and if you just have a giant tub of Legos, it's crazy. It's you're spoiled for choice. There's too many options, but when you kind of look through mindlessly, or you look through and you kind of go, oh, this is a cool piece, and you set it to the side. I think that's something that people should do more with their designs, in particular when you're researching and you're looking and you're on Pinterest or you're on whatever, and you're like doing the whole thing. So yeah, when you give yourself a strong basis and you take those cool pieces and you say, this is the cool piece, you take time sifting, you take time and you kind of go, okay, cool. Like, here's this cool piece I want to use for the front. Here's this cool piece I want to use for the back. You find something unconventionally, go, oh, this kind of looks like an engine. Let's use that. That's a great way to then find everything else to get it after, to put it together, right? You find everything else and you can make something super sick. And you can have fun with like reorganizing and rearranging those cool pieces you set aside. Rafe said I gathered a ton of reference and wrote out the whole rules, but the specifics were definitely a mystery. Yeah, okay, great. Because yeah, the ethos of this design is really fun. Sorry, I'll take my or let me bring up your original really quick so we can look at it properly. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Yeah. So just even in the original that you had, the ethos is really clear. Like I got it immediately. Like it's happening in the desert. There's some kind of combat, some kind of warrior. This is very like Catholicism coded, which I think is really cool. I think it's a cool thing. So it's got that weird sort of mysticism world to it. So I got that immediately. But yeah, when you create a whole world and you write everything out and you have everything on a broad sense, it's hard to, or it can be hard to narrow down and choose something specific, which is why I actually like to start with the specifics when I'm world building. I actually don't like to start broad and go in. I like to start with something super tight, review it, see if it could be better, and then go broad, and then go back to that idea and like make it fit. That's what I personally like to do. And if you guys wanted to learn my world building process for how I come up with ideas, you can take the free workshop this weekend, and you can take the 10-week boot camp that's coming up in June. So if you guys want my approach, I mean, you'll learn my approach if you take the workshop. I'll talk about my approach tomorrow. But yeah, anyway, so that's actually a great way to leave it, because you'll have all of your you'll have all of your stuff. You'll be able to get that worldview. But yeah, great work, dude. This is good, Rafe. Good job. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have Auroras, and we have this cool character, Aza, which is super fun. Not only do we have a great design here, there's a second page with like little comic sequences and sketching and all of that stuff. This is super fun. I love how much effort and work you put into this. It's super cool. So much attitude. Really, really fun. And the design is great. So looking at your character sheet, there's so much tude. So much tude here. So much attitude. And there's a few, I mean, like, I'll probably be talking mostly about form for this one. But first I have to acknowledge, it's just a really fun character. I like the setting you put them in. They're on the top of a tower, kind of hanging off with their little flip-flops. They're pouring something into a gutter somewhere. You know, we can look at this, and it's got a no fun allowed sticker on it, which technically is sideways if this bottle is sideways. So I don't know about that one. But not allowed to touch it, but clearly they're touching it. That's a fun element. But they're also worried and they're emotional. You know, it can't be an Aurora's character if they're not also worried and emotional. It's the rules. So yeah. So with this piece, I think there's a few things here we can immediately address. So number one, I think that for some of the posing, certain elements are a little bit off, just structure and form wise. So for instance here, like with this head kind of looking up and back, since we're looking up at the nose and up at the brow ridge and up at the lip here, the forehead going almost straight up is basically the same as the forehead going like really forward in this shot. It looks like it's really coming forward rather than back. So the angle of the head and the angle of the head and the hat might be a little bit off here. You might consider wanting to do something where you're seeing more of the top of the hat rather than looking at it head on there. You're looking at more of the hat, and the head is probably going back in this direction more, and the hair is maybe covering it a little bit more here across that axis. And then we maybe even take this in a little bit here. So I know the character does have a cartoonishly big head, and that's part of the design, but I still think we can reel it in a little bit more for some of this stuff. So that could be good, stuff like that. Another thing is, I know when you're doing line art and you're doing cleanups, you like to block shadows with this scribbly line. It's not that I hate it. I just think that it is potentially distracting from the actual forms. Like, I know you're blocking in, like, here's where the shadow is, but I do think that we could try a different approach and it might end up being stronger. If we just take a secondary value here. Whoa, I'm going to be real, guys. A dog just went ballistic outside. Crazy bark sounds. Yeah. If we just take a secondary value and we just let that shape be, you know, and we maybe even do a little bit of an overlap of the neck there, that's feeling a little bit more clear potentially. I think also the back of the head here, since they're looking up especially, it's probably more likely that the head begins here, and that the ear, you can always kind of map the ear to the bottom of the nose and the top of the eyes. That's a good way to map it. And if we wrap around in that fashion, we could probably move the ear a little bit higher rather than having a bit lower. So proportions forms seem to be one of the biggest things for this page in particular, just proportions and forms. But again, fairly easily remedied. The dog wants to come give a shake. Dude, honestly, yeah, the dog went bully. It was like, it was like a crazy dog sound. I love this. This is a great gesture. I think it's maybe one of the stronger gestures on the page. I really like it. The mischievous look and the kind of downturned elements are looking really, really great. I made the brim a little too long on this one in comparison, but there we go. Same note here in terms of the wraparound form as before, whereas here what you're kind of communicating is more of a flat shape that has a curve to it. rather than a shape that curves all the way around, especially because the head's tilted down. You would see the top of this wrap around the edge. So you would see this come around the bend here across the other side and finish wrapping around. And again, it does so much for the forms when you do that. When you do that kind of full wraparound thing, which you have here. Like you have it here on this robe. This is wrapping around fully. So I know you can do it. You can do it. Even here is a little bit of a problem area. It's like, it's so minute, but getting into the habit of having your forms fully wrap around an object, it just really, it's the kind of difference it makes is night and day. And it's one of those things that separates the intermediates from the professionals a lot of the time, is that little things like that on a consistent basis. So you got to be locked in on that stuff to be doing it. Lighting wise, values wise, I like how you've blocked in the light for a lot of these areas. I like that the big hat is casting a shadow and that you're kind of grouping the billowing cape into these different value shapes. I think it's great. Something to consider is that whenever you have any kind of underside of anything in this kind of context, it would just be super dark, super, super dark. And this does so much for depth in particular. Like this is a great way to increase the real true feeling of depth. The depth here is so much better than how it was before. Another thing is when it comes to foreshortening of something that's coming towards you in particular, you do have to be on it. So something like this, where this fold is coming over and this is kind of going back, it's just not necessarily like enough. You need stronger overlapping shapes that are increasing in the rate of change consistently. Like, the cuff is coming towards you. So all those little lines are really, they're stacked in front of each other. So you can't really have any big things happening when you're wanting to do the kind of overlap foreshortening there. Yeah, that's what I'd say. And then yeah, and then I think overall you could potentially be just bolder with your shadows. Like, since you have the big hat here, even how it was before where, it was still there, I think you could still have just a big dark shadow on the thing. And even for the gold, you can drop the value of this too. And this could also kind of come up as well to be part of that circular thing. Having big shadows like this, again, it allows the viewer to kind of relax. I know that sounds weird, but it allows the viewer to kind of relax and say, oh, okay, you're telling me what's happening with the form with really big, clear shadows. You're telling me what's happening with the light in the form with big, clear shadows. Cool, I can relax, Something like that could be good for a piece like this. And then from that point, you can kind of walk it back and you can have that kind of highlight fade down into more of a mid-tone as it kind of goes down a form like that, depending on what you want to do or the vibes. I know you threw this together pretty quick. Like, I know you were on your speed maxing grind set for this one. But the thing is that like when you focus on getting those little things right, like over and over, when you focus on getting those things right, then speed won't take away that knowledge. It won't take away your ability to do that over and over, quickly and efficiently. Another thing is with this arm, thinking maybe we could drop it back a little bit here, because it's kind of sort of turning away. So if we have the shoulder kind of hiding behind, it kind of helps turning the body to match with where the collar's going, right? Yeah. Something like that, perhaps, perchance. And then again, big shadows. So if the arm's kind of coming back here, do some nice big shadows. Potentially. So that's, I think, most of what I would say for this, I think, is included in that kind of set of information. Making sure your forms wrap around. I do think maybe taking a break from the the scribble line shadow indication could be good. It could be good for you. I think it would be good for you, to be honest. I think it would help you develop stronger techniques and habits around like indicating form in light and shadow, and it kind of set you free a little bit in that way. Also with areas like the hand, when you're worried about values and shading and shadows and all of that stuff, again, being bold is the way. Being bold is the one. So for stuff like this, just literally all this stuff, just put everything in a shadow value. All of this, the front side of your knuckles, the main side of the hand, you know, the underside of this, the main part of the thumb, just put it all in shadow. And be blocky. A lot of people like to shade things kind of retroactively, like, oh, I'm going to add shadows. It's like, no, you should really be mostly kind of trying to paint in everything but the light and where the light would be for a lot of it. It allows your piece to feel a lot more graphic and a lot of times it's more realistic. Like whatever's not facing the light source is going to be like in a shadow, especially if the light source is bright or something. But yeah, some of these forms maybe need a bit of attention, potentially. Let me look at my own hand here. Yeah, there's a couple lines that like run through. They kind of like pull into the hand a little bit as it curves over. But this version where you have the hand coming out and the thumb coming up, there's a big shadow here. Sorry, I'm using my own hand as reference. Yeah, big shadow there, and then it kind of eases up there. And then this wouldn't be, I think, this would be further back because this is actually where the knuckles would be, so the palm would recede. Something like that. That looks pretty, that looks a little bit better. Yeah, for hand reference, just look at your hand, baby. There you go. Bam. Wow. I really said it's time to stream, and the world's loudest, like, ambulances and sirens were like, it's go time, baby. It's go time. Guys, take out your barking dogs, turn on your sirens. God, I hope everyone's okay wherever that ambulance is going. Something like that could help with your hand shape stuff. And just be a little bit more confident because with your where you're placing your shadows and everything, because that's maybe a bit more clear. I think like probably some other stuff has to change too to make that kind of work. But in terms of the kind of more ambiguous lighting of kind of the hand, it could be a lot stronger just to go for it with the highlights and shadows, or choosing where the shadows are, grouping your shadows boldly. Okay, so blah 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 blah. Anything else? Yeah, I think I would just apply that information to the other gestures and poses you have. I love the flip flop coming off the foot here. This is great. I love that. It's really great. I guess similar notes about values. In certain areas, the shadows get a little dangerously close to some of the darker values, and some of the darker values here, they get even darker, which you kind of don't want. You with darker values, you would rather, how do I explain this? It's hard to explain. You'd rather set the darkness and then kind of go a little lighter in some areas rather than going dark and then going even darker. So if we set our darkness here, we want this to be that kind of even darkness or something. It's much easier to, in my opinion, to shade dark into a little bit more of a light. You just choose kind of an off black and an area where the light would kind of come through, like here, where the light might kind of peek through from this pant leg, but then be obstructed by the ankle. The ankle would cause a problem with the light. And then the backside would obviously be a problem. Like that could maybe look a little bit more clear. You could fade it a little bit more rather than choosing something dark and going close to black. Like you typically want to avoid going straight to black a lot of the time, or even close to black. Like even here, this gradient into the darkness is really aggressive. It's potentially too aggressive. You might want to knock this back a little bit. You want the shapes to be clear, but you don't want the values to dominate and wreck your piece. And that's the difference between like going for realism and going for clarity of your design. Because we're really talking about design. Design is the most important thing. Realism is secondary to clarity. All right. Cool. Damn. Got a lot of fun folks from past streams hopping in the chat. I see you guys. Also, just like saying hey to everyone in the chat. It's hard for me to keep up with the chat and also focus on the critique, so I'm mostly focused on the critique today, but I'll take a look at chat in a little bit and we'll get after it. I'm also already starting to lose my voice. I'm only on critique number 3. So next up we have Ember's design. So we're not done yet. We got to look at the comic because it's sick. So in your developmental work, I see you trying out a bunch of different colors here. I think, normally I'm not a fan of this kind of color design, but what I like about your approach is that the pose is so strong that you can see if the colors actually fit with the pose. So the more noble, heroic coloring, not so much. The more kind of generically good coloring, not so much. The more kind of flowery, sort of dainty, light coloring, not so much. The maroon, it's like too evil. This one's maybe a bit too strong. I really like how you landed on this one. This one's feeling good. Although the purple's kind of calling. I think if the green hinted a bit more towards gold and the purple hinted a bit more towards like a magenta, could be kind of cool. Could be cool. But I do like the motif here. This story sketch is awesome. I just like the sickening grin the character has. I'm not going to critique this one for painting purposes because I know this was kind of you're blocking it in. Like I know that you would kind of come back and repaint and redo that stuff. But Oro says the purple was literally everyone's favorite, but it's the exact color screen of Kenny. I don't know. I can't remember what design that is, but dude, you can have repeating color schemes. That's fine. Yeah, the face is great. These story sketches I love, like the kid kind of summoning all power and then having that dark face with the black eyes. Like it's kind of like sort of when Luffy goes evil mode in a way. Everyone's trying to stop them. We have a lot of story moments. Everything's going crazy. Cataclysm, so crying, so sad. Everyone's like, what's going on? And then the character falling to the ground being a serious story moment. So I like that you're sketching out story moments of importance that the character kind of exists in. And here we can see that kind of sketch you did. And I love the rough sketch of this. This has a lot of personality and fun. I think it's a great exploration sketch. And obviously the headmaster is very concerned. The Towerhead Wizard. They're probably looking for the kid. They don't know where he is. They're stressed out. This kid's running amok. And here we have the kind of evil sketch. I love this. This is a great exploration sketch. This is awesome. Sticking spell. Ooh, cool. Okay, so you're thinking about spells. You're thinking about this. You're thinking about how this kid gets carried away. That's hilarious. I like how limp. Just like that's funny. This style reminds me a little bit of the sketching style from the How to Train Your Dragon stories, and it's got that really nice kind of that charm. But it's the very kind of sneaky or smirky charm, which I actually really like. Okay. So here we have an actual piece of sequential art. So, dude, props to you for doing a whole sequence. Normally, we wouldn't ask. But you see, Azai is unique. He requires special care. He's quiet, brilliant, and, well, honestly, impossible to entertain for long. Simply put, he's trouble. That's great. He's climbing in flip-flops. Just climbing right up the tower. That's fun. Nice intro sequence. Introduces who the character is. It's pretty fun. And you're doing that thing with comics, which is great, where you say something about the character while showing contrasting or almost like non-complementary or non-descriptive imagery. Like non-descriptive imagery with descriptive text is great, and descriptive text with non-descriptive imagery is great too. I think I might have said the same thing twice, but you guys get what I mean. Yeah, great job on this. I know you threw this together pretty quick, and I can tell you had a ton of fun with it. It's a fun character. Good job, Oro. All right, now we're looking at Ember's work. Sorry for the jump scare if you're in the chat, Ember. So we have a Nordic themed design here. So mostly this is in rough sketch. So here we have Freya. Thinking about the age, so 50s, maybe early 60s, we have more of an aged character. And even though the sketch is super rough, and some areas are maybe tough to understand visually, like the legibility is maybe not as high for some of the sketches, I still see the indications of the little smirk here, that little kind of cheek lifting on this side. I think those little areas of expression are great. You have the creases in the eyebrows. So the subtle expression here, I think, is really, really great. She's got that like take no nonsense attitude, and has that very maternal feel and vibe, which I think is awesome. I love the bangles coming forward and the hair kind of going back. And here I can see you're exploring ideas of the hairstyle, so keeping it in a bun with a little pin through it. It's got this cool ring at the bottom. I love that. I love that element. I love really graphic details that tie the hair together. So again, your notes page, I get it. You know, it's awesome. You're thinking through your ideas. Hard for me to read some of it, but the things that I kind of really get here are like bar owner. We've got tired here. Or we also have runes are a thing. Imposing, vain, a goddess, a witch maybe. Customers are cursed to call her Freya after leaving the bar. Oh. So you have this kind of like bartender, Nordic god bent, which I love. Super cool. So here I can see you actually have your costume sketches here. So we have the character in a apron for some of it. And, your exploration here is mostly just with value, which I actually like. You have the bold kind of blocky layout where you're focusing on very darks and very darks and lights. And you also have more balanced approaches here, which are all working. The white boots, I think, kind of sort of take away a little bit. And the black boots here are feeling pretty good. Yeah, I'm liking it. When you're doing this kind of stuff and you're thinking about balancing your values and trying to figure out the flow, I would try and figure out kind of like the order of importance, using kind of gradients of value. Like you have dark boots into a medium gray tunic into, the medium skin tone with the kind of light shirt. It's a nice kind of building up or a ratio. And here you kind of starting more dark and going a little bit lighter as you go. But also you can think of value as like caps, where dark boots really hold the design together, whereas light boots pull your attention down and they are really loud. So you can kind of pull your attention and it can kind of leave from the design a little bit. So values, how you use them is really diverse. And the best way to learn how to use values is just with experience, analysis, and trial and error, or just repetition and analysis. So look at designs that you like, check their values, check your own values, figure out where the attention's going. When you squinting is good. Another thing is that when you sketch really loosely like this, and the sketch is with such a dark pencil brush, what can happen is when you have an area that is requiring a lot of detail, or that you're including a lot of detail, like the kind of straps or folds, or the kind of bangles or rings around the arm or something like that, because you use such a heavy black line to sketch, it actually increases the visual noise and it pulls attention into those areas where you might not actually want that attention to be. So when you're doing designs like this, it's possible that you might want to consider doing not a clean line pass, but maybe bringing down the opacity on some of the lines you have here, and choosing to go a little bit more refined or a little bit more detailed with what you have. So for instance, with this one, as an example, you could take this and again, you're trying out the values, right? So it's not super necessary, but instead of having this stacked line of like 80 lines, kind of saying, you know what, I can say it with one line, just this once for this section. I can say this with one line. Maybe she has a bracelet. The hand goes back here. You don't have to do a ton, right? Here where the bosom extends, and we have these lines here, and we have the straps going back. Something like this, which is just simple. And again, just because you're checking values and you're trying out the design, something like this that you then kind of copy over is a great way to check your values, because now it's a lot easier for you to see if your lights are actually light. Because if you put lights next to a bunch of really heavy scribbly black lines, it actually like averages out closer to a midtone, sort of, in a way. But it's, again, like, working loose is great because you're free, you can cover a lot of ground really quick. But when you're actually trying to make strong decisions, sometimes the looseness can hinder your decisions depending on what those decisions are. And again, experience is a great way to learn this, great way to improve. But you can see it doesn't take actually that much time to go in and say, like, oh, we have like a little ring in the middle here, you know, and we have this part that goes around and this part that goes around here, and we have a sack here, you know, and the sack has a little buckle and there's a heart on it, you know, and now all of a sudden that heart kind of stands out. It's kind of cool. So stuff like that is good to do. Elements that are kind of more busy, like little sashes coming up and over that kind of hang down, you don't have to be overly detailed with your sketch, because again, if it's a sketch, it's just a sketch, right? You're not doing like a final illustration or pushing it really hard. But I like the roughness and the looseness you have for putting an idea down. But when it comes to actually like testing and trial and error and figuring out what works best for the piece, like, I think slowing down a little bit and just taking the time to do just a basic line drawing, and then kind of going back and doing tie downs and all that stuff and making it like a more of a more striking final, where you're focusing a lot more on your illustration, your draftsmanship, I think could be good. So that's what I'd say about that, but I'm liking it, liking the ideas. Here you're trying different costume iterations. So something more with fur, which I like, which is pretty fun. Kind of not so much down the line of the barmaid with the fur. The fur is kind of more of an outdoorsy feel. But I like this one with the bones around the neck. Really cool look. This one looking very hardy. I definitely prefer the big kind of hardy look that you had and that you were trying with the other one. This is a great outcome. Trying out tattoos. Very cool. So Nordic, runes, trying all that stuff. I really like it. If it's more of a modern feel, you could make some modern references, which is a silly thing, like an Easter egg thing you don't have to do, but you could. And but I like the vibe of the kind of sleeve tattoos, and things are flowing up and around. What's cool about this is you could even make a reference to either Freya's story, or you could make a reference to like Ragnarok, the end of times. You know, you could add in some cool narrative elements here, and not just focus on shape. You could actually really tell a story if you wanted to. If you wanted to take that time, it could be really interesting. And here you're exploring some jewelry ideas. Yeah, this one kind of same thing, where something like this, when you're exploring jewelry, this wants an extra session where you're actually figuring out how the materials are looking. Jewelry and these kind of designs, like when you're designing characters and you start with silhouettes, it's a great process to get that initial read of what that is. And this is great for figuring out and trying out different ideas. But when it comes to choosing one, I think you need a bit more information here. So something like this, for instance, if this was like an emerald, and you had this emerald here, and we set our brush to color dodge, and we bling this emerald out, and we do kind of a cool weird thing where we show those kind of interior shadows, and we come at it again, and we do all that stuff. If we have like a cool gem-like texture for this, and then we have like a crazy sort of gold chain that it's attached to. Let me set our brush back to normal. But we have like a crazy gold thing, and maybe the gold is the encasing, and it's wrapped around, and you know, it has the prongs and the thing, and then we add that kind of more shadow value layer or whatever. If we're thinking about this design and we're wanting it to feel really cool and interesting, we might need just a little bit more information before we can say yes or no to a design like this, right? Because now that we have like more information here, we can say like, oh, that's cool. That has a really cool vibe, but it's very different than the initial vibe of just like a square shape. Or if it's metal, then you just have it be metal, or if it's this, you have it be that. But that intense black line and just the shape and just the idea, I think giving yourself a little bit more information is good. And also getting into a habit of sketching with color and just sketching materials out is a great way to just get good at it. Because sketching with materials is, number one, it's essential to be able to actually be like, if you want to be a working concept artist, it's essential. You have to be able to paint and to draw. And the only way you can get good at painting and drawing is to paint and draw. So just practicing doing these kind of little material things and these little random elements and whatnot is a great way to start to get that practice. Yeah, and then you can kind of make an actual decision. You can make like a real decision about it. So that's kind of cool. And if you do that for the rest of these, then you'll be able to have a bunch of cool ideas that you can pull from. Of course, like varying in complexity and what you want out of them. Big chunky shadows. Hell yeah. So that's what I would say about that. But kind of reviewing back over again, I think that your approach to ideas is great. I can tell you're thinking in the right way. Thinking about the narrative surrounding different things, thinking about cool design opportunities, thinking about costuming, different elements of costuming. You're thinking about value and how you can structure your values well. You're trying all those things. You're thinking about expression, attitude, who they are. You're thinking through your ideas. I think it's great. I think that the thing that's going to aid you the most going forward is probably slowing down a little bit and working through your ideas with potentially a little bit more clarity, using more of your illustration skills and your drawing skills, which is great. Dude, no worry about the handwriting. My handwriting is insane as well. My goodness. So, so yeah, so there you go. Okay. So. Oh, it's Frigga. Oops. Awkward. I see. Try to refine it, but I realize sometimes it's hard for me to do so because of indecision when designing. Yeah, the indecision thing is solved through experience, and indecision is solved through like research and repetition. So you look at things and you appreciate things that you like. So the things that you like, you really look at them and appreciate them. And then through repetition of drawing and trying out things, specifically like tying things down with specificity is really important. The only way to get good at something is to do it. Like you have to do it. So if you're worried about having a hard time refining designs or taking the next step to refine your designs, unfortunately, being worried about it and being a little bit afraid to jump in or to slow down and really get after it, it's just going to make the issue worse long term. Whereas when you start and you just start pushing and you start working through that stuff and you gain experience in that, you're actually working towards the solution that won't come to you unless you do that, right? But again, I love your process, love your thinking here, which is great. But yeah, I definitely want to see some more focus in terms of the draftsmanship and the drawing. But well done, Ember. Awesome. There you go. Very cool. Hell yeah. So moving on to maze design. Here we have a really fun character. We have a Semir. 200-year-old carnival man. Good God. He's no flamboyant flim-flamming shyster. What language? Freely, he'll tell his tale of travel, how he acquired each prize you seek, of the cool feel of the glass bottle. Oh, interesting. Cool. Frigid enchanted liquid that prolongs his life. Oh, God. Most precious of the loot. Handed over by the adventuring party's captain. With crow's foot smile, he said, I do not wish to see my grandchildren's graves. Our young Casimir may drink his fill of life if he be not afraid. Dude, this is sick. I love how invested this is. You're so invested. This is sick. Any adult with coin may enter. So it's cool. So it's like a competition character. Today's brass ring prize. Genuine enthralled goblin heart still beating. Oh my god. Dude, this is hilarious. For example, only size color may differ. Ebony heart. Oh, cool. So like this is I like this page. It's an interesting presentation page because it's doing a few things. It's talking in first person voice and third person voice. It's talking in quotations. It's also making reference to the rules as well. Like it's an interesting page of information. But I was able to follow it really well, so I can't really critique it because I was able to follow it. So yeah, good job. The vibes here are awesome. Love the vibes here. I think, you know, in alignment with some of the other critiques I made earlier, I think there's going to be a lot of repetition with this one in terms of showing more complete forms with the drawing. So May, if you're watching this and you skipped ahead to watch this part, I would kind of go back and take a look at some of the other reviews when talking specifically about forms and how to have like more compelling forms wrapping around objects, like wrapping around a more rounded object here. So having that little bit of extra material going around and showing that it's actually wrapping around and not just sitting there, you know? Or if it's not wrapping around, just being a little bit more protruding because it just would be. It'd be a little bit more protruding as it comes out. All right. Yeah. So there you go. There you go. Bam, bam. Okay. So again, similarly to before with these kind of big hat designs, I really like when there's like a clear kind of bevel where a seam is, for instance. So along the bottom edge here, I like putting a little bit of a seam to show it's kind of curling in as it's being sewn to something else. It's a very, very minute thing that I like a lot and I like to keep in my kind of costume design sketches and stuff. Not necessarily a necessity, but I think I like to include it personally. And then you just kind of offset the hat a little bit in that way. It helps to just add that feeling of just like mass, you know, in a lot of ways. So because there's not a lot of very aggressive drop shadow in this, you have some drop shadow here, and I think the value blend here is like perfect. I think you did a great job specifically with this shadow. It's really, really well done. But under the chin, for instance, I think we could knock that back like 50% maybe. Just knock it back. Doesn't have to be as dark maybe. It's a very, very dark drop shadow. If we had other drop shadows that were as dark, I might, you know, recommend keeping it, but because there's not many others at all that have that same level of intense dark, I would, you know, let it be a little bit more chill. Something like this, again, if this is wrapping around, even though it's dead on, you would still see a little bit of overlap with how it curves over. Just a hair, just enough. And again, it's gonna be good for the form, so that's nice. The other thing is I like that you are putting in your shadows for the white. Putting shading on white is a challenge, but you're doing a pretty good job here. But again, if the mass of the body is flowing down, then we can take a selection of this and we can gradually kind of bring it down with a light into a heavy flow there. So we can kind of pinch at the waist or go into the waist. Or if we don't want to do that and we want to show that it's going down as like a fold into the belt area, then we can just have it be a little bit dark at the base, which also looks good and kind of does that same purpose. But yeah, for certain areas, you might want to block in kind of big shadows, like here on the arm. Maybe this is a good spot for a big shadow, and then a big kind of highlight down here. Again, similar notes to what we were talking about before, being very bold with shadows, being very big with shadows, because the only way you get good at placing them is by trying, right? Is by trying. Since this frill is frilling out, I think we can place this whole frill in shadow, if I'm being honest. So you can probably place this whole thing and lighten it a bit, maybe. Grab that, punch it in. Yeah, just adding more mass to this piece might be good because it helps the flumph and the plumph if it has a lot of nice mass. Okay. The design notes. I think, honestly, I can tell you are locked in, dude. I can tell you're locked in. Like, you are locked in for this. You've got all the elements that you like. You're thinking about your lacing, thinking about the shoes. The only thing is the shoe has no soles, which is not uncommon for that era, but there would probably be something, right? Something, some kind of padding, some kind of leather on the bottom. So, yeah, thinking about the sole of the shoe would be pretty important here, especially if he's a traveler character or wandering around. Something very simple. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And then for here, my intuition tells me it needs like a red ribbon just to help end all of the red busyness before you enter into the white boot. I don't know why. It just feels like it needs that before it goes into the white boot. I could be wrong, but that's just a feeling I have. You can't always quantify the feeling stuff. Sometimes it's just an intuition or a feeling thing. For the gold, I do want the gold to pop. I'm not going to lie. I feel like the gold could be popping. All these elements. I feel like we could be going for a gold motif in a lot of these areas. Going for that third value. The first value being the local value, second value being the shadow value, third value being a material indication value. Here it is defining a metallic texture. Something like this could be good. I know you have it in a couple areas, but again, being a bit more generous with our highlights could end up favoring well in our design. But this design rules. I love this guy. This guy is awesome. So yeah, design-wise, I think like the rules and prizes on the coming off of the arm, like he's wearing it. It's a little corny, like a little corny. But it's not bad. Like it's not like I'm mad at the element, but there could be a more elegant solution. There could be a more elegant solution. Just because it feels a little like I'm trying to think about the person who would actually have this, and I'm having a hard time. I can see how you got to this, where he's like has his arm out, and he's presenting the idea. I do like that. Maybe if he had one on his other arms, and then one said rules, one said prizes, so they change every day, or maybe he could even change them, like to be funky or something. I'm trying to think of a better solution for that. I think the costume and the character, they just go pretty hard in general. It's hard for me to not kind of see this thing coming off the arm as a bit of a liability for the design. Like it feels like it's not necessarily helping the design. It's possibly hindering the design. Like if I took the same idea and I just removed this element completely, like how much does the character actually change? Really? You know? I don't know. It's hard to say. It really is hard to say. But I don't want to change your idea too much, and I don't want to just say it's a bad idea, but I think there might be a more elegant solution. It could be that he's like holding the list, and the list kind of unfurls and flows off of the hand in some way, or something. But again, I don't want to come in and just say like, hey, by the way, just don't do that whole thing. That seems like the whole point of the whole design. But I do think that we could potentially find a stronger design solution. Maybe having it part of his tunic in some way could be good. Having it like you could have it literally be on his front. I know it's covering a lot of this great design work you did, and I know you don't want to do that. But then it allows the big seal thing here to almost be like a seal, and then also like a tie maybe that's attached to the pendant that has the rules. Like there's some cool ideas there. There's some cool elements there, but it is hard. It is hard to see a solution for this. But yeah, coming off the arms, it feels a little corny, but corny's not bad. Corny could be fine. Corny could be totally fine. In fact, In fact, okay. In fact, I raise you this. If you're going to do this, I would go all the way and I would have it be like huge, like comically huge. And maybe even you'd see like there could be an indication of another one on the other side or something like it would be part of a cape. You know how some people have a cape and then the cape like flows into the attaches here and then it hangs down like that. Something like that could work. Like you could do something like that where he reveals from his cape, which is attached here, that there is in fact a list of things. He's like, oh, would you like a prize? You know? And that could be a potential solution. Trying to think creatively here. It's hard to say. But yeah, I think your values are pretty decent. I think you could be more aggressive with your lighting and how you're structuring your forms. I feel like that seems to be the universal critique. I think it's just something people could work on in general. Just pushing your forms, having more mass, where you actually want or indicate more mass. Yeah, that's kind of mostly, I think, what I wanted to cover with this design. But for the most part, I think this design rules. Again, I love the idea. I was really honestly kind of taken aback by the all the writing you did. I think the writing is a really great addition. I love the big C. Oh, it's Casimir. It's a big C, of course. Maybe the font, maybe the outline kind of others from the font a bit. If you had this same idea, let's see if we can do it really quick. Yeah, same idea. Cut that, cut that. Make it on a new layer. We fill. Bang. Then we do a drop shadow. We make it black. We do %, spread, smaller, drop it down, something like that. So if you have something like this, oh, oops, didn't hit save, my bad. I always do that. I always hit escape to get out of things, but then it's like, apparently that doesn't work at all. Yeah. If you have the drop shadow be a bit bolder here, and then I think you can kind of match the drop shadow size with the thing up here, maybe then it will tie the fonts a little bit more, potentially. It's really up to you. But that could, it's a bit intense, isn't it? The black is a bit intense. Probably not black. Probably like a warm brown. Something like that. Something like that. In any case. Here, remove that. There you go. That maybe ties it in a bit more. The big red, it does kind of other a bit. It took me a second to realize it was Casimir. Anyway, I was really taken aback by this design. It was really cool. And yeah, those are some main elements I would focus on, kind of having better command over form for the body. The eyes are, I'm not seeing a lot of the age, you know? Oh no, never mind. Because the captain has the crow's foot eyes. I thought he had the crow's foot eyes. So he's supposed to be like weirdly young, concerningly young. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this is there's not much more to say about this. This is looking great. The boots are hilarious. I will say the ratio of detail is a little bit jarring. Like there are some details that are so fine that it kind of sort of makes it a little jarring, like the laces being so tiny. And some things work really well in real life, and it's harder to make them work on the page because the page is its own medium, right? Oh, I got a leg cramp I just gave myself. Love that. The page is its own medium with its own kind of wants and whims. So adhering more to what the page wants in terms of the design and how to show it could be good. Also for the drop shadow here, you just wouldn't see the drop shadow be, would see the drop shadow be light. You'd see it only appear on the bottom, and you could probably extend this shadow a lot, actually. Yeah, something like that. little things like that. But yeah, great work, May. This is awesome. I'm gonna move on, but this idea rules. Maybe we fade up a little bit there. Ease up on that ruffle. Yeah, nice. Okay, great. Sweet. Next idea. Bards. Super cool. So this idea is, there's a lot of stuff here. A lot of stuff. So let's start with the kind of reference page. We have a lot of alien stuff. We have fish skeletons, see-through fish things. Some cool concept art references. A lot of this is sci-fi. A ton of this is sci-fi. And I remember there were a lot of questions on how to like merge sci-fi with fantasy during the workshop. Because we're designing for fantasy, people kind of want to make it work with sci-fi. So, you know, talking about how to meld sci-fi elements into fantasy, looking at references like Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind and all that stuff is good. This, for instance, like referencing dragons is really great because dragons are just inherently a fantasy element. So here we have this cool dragon skeleton sort of indication. And if I'm thinking correctly with your references, maybe it's going to be more of a see-through dragon. That's going to look sick. I really want to see more of that. That looks dope. In terms of the actual character design, what I see a lot of these kind of like sci-fi shaped characters, sci-fi shaped design, with some kind of mask head shapes and all that stuff. In your main sort of lineup here, it's a lot of sort of tubular body stuff with some kind of hoods and some masks. This is dope. Like, it's cool. But it's hard for me to critique like as a fantasy design. Like, it's hard to critique as a like a work of fantasy. I know in the broader context it's connected to fantasy themes, but it's hard for me to critique it as that. And it's also hard for me to critique in a way that is useful to you. Like, here I can see that this character is sort of supposed to look cool. Like, that seems to be the main goal here. And when you're designing for games, that's like a huge part of it. You want it to look cool. That's like almost the entire goal. But I'm not getting a strong narrative from this. I know they have some kind of tool in their hand. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's got a wire attached to something. They've got a hood. That's cool. That's sick. They got the little side piece, the little holster. So maybe this is a gun of some kind, but it doesn't appear in the other versions. So in terms of like the stacked value in the design, I think this is sick. Like, this is a great like exosuit sci-fi suit. It's cool. I don't really have any notes for something like this. Yeah, the values are nice and distinct and things are kind of cool. The gesture is kind of moody and sassy, which I don't know if that is what you're going for with this design, but it's dope. But I'm way more interested in what's happening on your actual research page. Like, I want to know more about the dragons. I want to know more about how these characters fit into the dragons. And I know you're doing a ton of notes here figuring this stuff out. And I could go in and I could kind of read and try to discern and everything. But I will say that I just can't glean anything from the actual design that's like tied to any narrative function. It just kind of feels like a character has to exist in a environment that they normally shouldn't be in. And I know it's vaguely related to dragons in some way. So it's a cool silhouette and it's a cool design and set of stuff, but it's really hard for me to critique in that way. I do love these cool kind of dragon motif design things you're trying to figure out and trying to and making happen. Like, they are dope. So like maybe more of a connection there, or like how it actually fits in. I don't know. It's hard for me to critique, but I do like how you're exploring. I can tell you're thinking about it really hard. But in terms of the outcome, I don't actually think there's anything I can say about this. But thank you so much for doing it, because it looks dope. And again, like I can see you got a ton out of it and you're like really focusing here. But yeah, not a ton I can say. I mean, I would honestly look to some of these other designs. Like, some of these other designs are not, a lot of them are telling me much about the character. Like, visually, I think this one's the most compelling. This one here with the mask and the cool helmet and the light around the helmet. Like, that one is like calling to me graphically the most, personally. But yeah, I'm so sorry that there's not more I can say about this, but it looks cool. Like, it looks dope. And there's no rendering notes I can give, because I can tell it's just kind of like a loose block in. Like, there's nothing I can like fully get in there and get after in that way. But sick stuff, and like keep on going. All right, next up we have Salem. All right, we have a cool anthropomorphic character. We're going to have back-to-back anthropomorphic characters here. We have Salem with this cat witch character, this Reaper cat witch, with a lot of sketches, a lot of backup material. So this one, again, I think very instantly, I just want to say, like, values, baby. Values. This one is definitely too dark, I think. Like, too dark for sure. If I were to go to black and white here and I zoom out, pretty much like the silhouette is pretty, you know, still there. You can kind of tell what's happening. You know, it's a scythe and a character with a hat, but all of the kind of wonderful details you're trying to include here kind of fall by the wayside. So I think that it's a little dark, I will say. One way we can work on this is just upping the exposure a little bit. We can just make it a little bit brighter, and then we can go back and darken it later. But for now, I think I'll just make it a little bit brighter so we can kind of just see what's going on for the most part. Cool. We'll merge that. Okay. And then we'll make the background a little bit dark again, so we can get that cool feel. Some of the things are going to feel a little neon-y just because of how we've adjusted the colors, but you know, again, for the most part, we're chilling here. Okay, so we did something weird with the text, I've just noticed. Oh, because I see what we did. Let's take this. All right, make it this color. And then we'll just cut it out. Okay, so. Okay. So with this design, I do think that there are, and I'll kind of bring this area back in a little bit just so it fits in with the background. Yeah, I do think that the values were the first thing that kind of called out to me to work on and to kind of fix, because it went super dark super quick. That is something that can happen when you're in the finishing stage, something we talked about just with the last piece as well, or the second to last piece, where when you go dark, you usually want to shade lighter, and when you go light, you want to shade a little bit darker to indicate the form with light is what I'm talking about. So in this case, something like the hat here, going all the way to black, it's just a bit of a mistake because you lose all the clarity, you lose everything pretty much, which we don't want. We don't lose everything. We want to keep a lot of stuff. I'll go down back to 10. Cool. Gosh, guys, I'm starting to lose my voice. I hope I don't run out of voice before we get to the end, because like, I do have to save my voice a little bit for the workshop tomorrow. Ooh, I'll try to be more taking care of my voice here. So yeah, I do think the values are a little bit dark. In terms of the design, I think it's cool. We have a cool kind of tartan pattern here. The tartan is not... The way you've rendered it here is not uncommon. Like, this is, people do this all the time for costume design, character design, where they just put a flat pattern on. I do think it has a way of, what's the term? It just flattens. It really flattens the design quite a bit, actually. So we want to be careful of that. We don't want it to flatten the design. We want it to... But it is just going to happen that way. But it's okay. Like, you can do it this way, but it is going to flatten your design a lot. Another thing is you have this kind of cat face, and when you have one eye visible, you want that one eye to be quite distinct. Even in this other version, like the eye is certainly distinct, but it is kind of competing with this other green in a way. I think in this version we went probably a little too bright here, but it's a bit of a better compromise. But having the second eye could be good. I mean, it's a posing thing. It's also kind of a taste thing, whether or not you want both eyes. I mean, both eyes for me kind of helps me see the character. It helps me kind of fully read the character. But let's actually look at your sketches here first. So here we have 3 different character sketches. Oh yeah, definitely got to drink water. Actually, yeah, I'm going to take 2 seconds to grab some water really quick. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, got some water. Nice. All right. So yeah, here we have some full body sketches here where I can tell you're thinking a lot about the costume. The pose largely the same, the costume changing quite a bit. When doing iterations this way, I do think, and this is kind of again my opinion, but I do think that a costume and a character's pose are very connected. It's hard to design a costume without designing the pose at the same time, and vice versa. Hard to design a pose without a costume as well, but the other way around is more tricky. When you keep the pose the same, and you try out many different iterations of costumes, certain things aren't just gonna, they're not gonna hit quite as well as some other things. Like for instance, even in this final version here with the netting coming across, or this kind of sash coming across isn't necessarily it's not necessarily the best for this pose in particular, but it might work really well for a different pose. I know I'm kind of asking a lot, especially probably when sketching this stuff out, like if you're not super experienced, can feel really daunting. But what I will say is sketching out the simple forms of these poses could be to your advantage in the future when you're trying stuff out. For instance, if you have the big hat and the sash, you can try a loose sketching approach where you try like you're seeing the underside of the big hat, you know, the cat's looking at you like this. The sash is kind of coming around the side and flowing back up the backside, and you know, you have the arm coming forward this time, and the scythe is like coming back across. You know, that could be a different pose where the hat is really working and the sash kind of coming around the backside or something is really working. And maybe the foot is coming in front and the other foot is kind of coming behind or something. So doing the homogeneous poses for your designs can lead to stilted results a lot of the time, which is just natural to the process. It's going to happen. So yeah, being more dynamic with your sketching, even when you're designing, I know, again, it's asking a lot. Sometimes you can do multiple costumes with the same pose, but it's like, I personally really don't like to. I think the pose and the costume are so connected, the attitude and what the character's wearing and how they're standing. It's just so important. Maybe give that a try next time. You can give it a try. You don't have to do it this time, but you can give it a try for next time. The different ideations for these designs, I do think are cool. I like how you're thinking about spiral motifs, multiple spirals. Here we have the triple spiral leading into the scythe. I don't know about that. And if you didn't choose it, so I guess you thought the same thing. But the spiral coming back from the scythe, that's a cool shape. How it's coming back and then spiraling in. That's really cool. And like flowing back up. And then ending with a big round shape is nice. And if you have a big round shape at the end, you probably want something of equal weight at this end, right? Visual weight, I mean. And then I like the different core set elements. And in your final, you kind of combined everything. So you combine the cool core set with the cool designs. You combine the tartan idea with this cool capelet thing. You did the circular ending with the spirally design at the end. Like, I do like it. You made them all work together in a cool way. In your color explorations, I can see you're exploring with value here. This is great. I think, again, you're thinking about value in a very utilitarian way where you're considering, like, where do I want the weight to fall? Where do I want the emphasis to fall? I know you landed on this last one. The last one, I just don't know. Like, I think somewhere between this one and the first one here could have been better for the design, maybe. But again, it really depends, right? But I know you ended up going with something like this. And then lighting it super aggressively was maybe just maybe a bit too aggressive in how dark you were going. For the color versions of this, yeah, you can even see when you squint, all the details disappear. Like the hand silhouette isn't visible. A lot of the areas that should be big areas of contrast aren't areas of contrast because the staff is so dark here. You can't appreciate how dark that bevel on the scythe is. I think one thing you can think about a lot here, Salem, is thinking about restraining a bit on your darks. I think that's maybe the big lesson here, or the big thing to focus on, where look how close to black this is. You could be way up here and that would still be extremely dark for what this kind of design is. For the coat, this is way in the black family, like way dark, 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 dark. You could really pull it up towards navy and it would still have that same kind of dark feel. Scaling everything up and then using light to achieve the mood you want is the way, in my view, for something like this. Yeah. And then using from this base, then going darker could be the move. Yeah, the pattern. Hard to talk about the pattern. It's hard for me to talk about the pattern. I don't hate it, but it's definitely, it makes the image very flat. Another thing is that line weight really matters. So like the line weight for this, it does feel a little bit heavy-handed. And by virtue of it feeling a little heavy-handed, it feels a little bit flat. Sometimes whenever you go really thick with your line work, it adds this flatness to the piece that you can't really escape, just because it's so graphic and so bold and so like different from what we think. Because a line usually is something that's just indicating a difference between something else, like the silhouette of a face. It's just showing you that the face is not what's behind it. It's not the background. This is its own thing. Or like the areas around the eyes, we use lines for that, or the nostril, or the line of the mouth, or something where it's a dark area. So that's why we use lines. But when you add in lines that are so thick, it adds this graphic element that can flatten the piece quite a bit. So I think that a lot of the lines that you're choosing here for the subject are just a little bit too thick. I think it's possible you're a little heavy with the line weight here, unless it's what you're going for. In that case, by all means, go for it. But if you were wanting something that felt a little more grounded, and didn't feel so much like just like this is a drawing of a thing, but instead it's the actual character, you could consider trying a little bit more of a lighter approach with the lines, just a little bit more, nothing too crazy in certain key areas. Like in certain areas, it just feels a little thick. Oh yeah. So back to the final. Okay. Another thing is that what I will say is the posing here, we want to make sure the center of gravity is in a good spot. So the center of gravity for this character, because they're leaning a little bit to the right with their head, it feels a little bit like you could tap them on the shoulder and they'd fall over this way. So one way to fix that is just taking your design, the whole thing. I guess we can't do the scythe because the scythe has stuff going straight up, but nah, we'll do it anyway. And just rotating it like a hair. Okay, that is not a hair. It's way too much. Bonk. Something like that. Easy piece. And now the character feels grounded. They feel like they're in space. They're not going to fall over. They feel good. That makes a huge difference to your design. Making sure that they're grounded and their weight is actually distributed to their feet properly is huge. It's huge. But yeah, a little heavy-handed with the lines, a little heavy-handed with the shadows and the light and stuff, because all the detail and all of the design and the shape you had just kind of got lost a little bit. But it's something that I think, just to be sure for next time, the design is fun. Like, I like the cat witch. The cat witch is always a super fun motif. I like the big hat. The proportions are cool. Yeah, the posing is interesting. I like how you're thinking about the character's mood and expression. Very sly, very slinky. Thinking about these different hat pieces and all of that stuff. Yeah, I think more repetition, more ideas, more designs. I would try to do some designs that are very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? I would try designs that are very, very reeled in, like less complex. So not as many buttons, not as many things, not as many individual things. I would try to do a few designs that are a bit simpler and have a bit of a focus on just your line work and just your use of light and shadow. I think your intuition with value is right. I think your intuition with value is good, but how you applied light to it was just a little bit of an extreme, let's say. And then I'll let you decide whether or not you prefer the the tartan kind of pattern stuff, or whether you want to try a different approach or something. But I think that overall the design is cool. Your shapes are cool. This whole thing at the end here looks sick. This looks so sick and appealing. I love the scythe motif is awesome. I love the jagged scythe coming out. Super sickening and freaky, freak mode. Yeah, it's dope. I think it's dope. I think just there's a few things in your execution that left me wanting just a little bit more. Wanting, just feeling like, what's going on? You know, I'm like squinting. I'm like, what's happening here? You know, just a little bit. But dope submission. Super cool. And the lore. We didn't even check the lore. A self-sufficient witch. Aw. Perfectly content with the company of her books. Aw. Occasional and the occasional traveler, following the arrival of a dark presence under her porch. Orchid's time spent foraging the ingredients and concocting potions have come to an end. The witch had a choice: embark on a journey to petition the elusive summer court for a solution, or rot in her refuge. Armed with the cursed scythe originating from the presence, Orchid's resolve and amateur pyromancy skills are put to the test. Dude, hell yeah. Yeah, definitely a cool character. I would definitely keep pushing this for sure. All right, great work, Salem. Thanks for the submission, and I hope those suggestions helped. At least things that you can think about going forward for sure. We'll see. We will see. All right, next up, Alex Quill, which I think just mentioned in the chat their earbuds died. Oh no. Oh no. Well, very robust submission from Alex here. So we have an anthropomorphic character, and they have a cool story. So very extensive. I'll show you the extent of this submission. It was a lot of stuff. Like, so we have the main kind of character sketch drawing here. We have a whole mind map page. We have the ship and a 3D mock-up of their ship, which is crazy. We have, you know, even more reference pages and testing sketches and stuff for this kind of chef motif. We have layout pages for early costume concepts, a more refined kind of costume concept layout. So it's a lot of stuff. But I think for this one, there are, you know, again, some kind of through lines and things I'm going to keep bringing up that I've continued to bring up before. One of them is form again. So same note. I can see in many areas you're actually like quite accurate, and I think the forms of the face here, I got to commend you, look great. You know, it's mapped well. The kind of muzzle extending out is working really well. Things are looking good. This wrapping around looks good. This wrapping around looks good. This wrapping around looks good. The arm coming out looks good. Looks good. The hand here, gesture here is great. The hand coming forward here, really nice gesture with the claw. Looking awesome. But I will say the torso going into the body here, it feels like this is maybe a different drawing. Like these two elements are different drawings a little bit. Based on what I can tell from this drawing of the character standing, I feel like their legs would actually be coming out a lot more towards the front here. The legs would be bigger in this circumstance than maybe how they are in this image, in this drawing. Something like that, perhaps. We could think about having those proportions match a bit better. But again, I think as is, it's not like a huge, like, this is wrong kind of thing. But I do think it's something to consider, potentially. Yeah, a little bit more push here. A little bit more push, I think, on this front end. Would help this feel like he's actually sitting and his legs are coming forward. Based on how it feels, how we're looking at him here, it looks like we're looking at him kind of head on, and then we're like looking down all of a sudden. It's not, you know, it's not anything too crazy. I think it's just like I might spot that as a potential like client or something and kind of be like, oh, what's going on there? Maybe, you know. The actual design itself, I like. We have the character here in their straw hat, They have shish kebabs in the hat. That's a little, you know, I don't hate it. I don't hate the shish kebabs in the hat, but it's not, it's a pretty, you know, when I zoom out, I couldn't even see they were there. I had to zoom in to see they were there. And when I zoomed in, they did feel a little out of place. I'm not going to lie, especially because the detailing is like so specific on these little tiny things. It's a little bit much, I will say. It could be a little bit much. Like if we, for instance, just kind of remove that element here, I don't think we would lose anything. I don't think the design would lose anything at all. I think it would be kind of fine. They have a big, what looks like an engine piece here. Big giant engine piece. There's some narrative. Here we see the backside, like that you added a backside sketch. Nice. Another thing is if you're gonna add light to something like this, I would add light universally. Little kind of splotches and blotches of light on the arms here. Could be a little distracting potentially, just a little bit. But yeah, great gesture with the hands, great gesture with the expression. Good draftsmanship with the engine piece and having it feel like the form is really coming forward. Good drawing. Yeah, same over here, good drawing. I think some of your sketch lines here are potentially over descriptive. I know that sounds kind of like a weird thing to say, but something like this line coming forward in the forearm, we can really knock this back. This line maybe shouldn't be so dark. Lines really matter, and like rough lines really matter. Having them or excluding them, they both matter. Pushing those lines back, because if you have light, the light should be telling you about these muscles. The light should be kind of telling you that these muscles are curving. It shouldn't really be the lines. Same with over here. Like these lines here and these lines here are a little bit much. Knocking these back could be good. It's just kind of a finishing thing, and I know it's like you don't want to render and polish every single thing, but it kind of sort of matters a little bit, you know? And I know you're adding some form shadows to some of these forms, which makes me wonder, like, do you want to add form shadows to everything or just those areas? So like, for instance, the pelvis here would need some shadows. This would need some shadows. This side here would need shadows, which you have. This side here would need shadows, which means some sides are going to have more like highlighted shapes. All of this is going to need shadow. Like if you're going to be including or excluding light elements, you got to be careful, right? Of how you include light or exclude light. Same with the pectorals. You would want the pectorals to have some kind of shadow going on. I'm just color picking the shadow right now. I'm not doing a multiply layer currently. But yeah, so I think like I would figure out whether or not you do want to use light to indicate form or not for different drawings, because it can feel a little jarring either way, yay or nay, right? Okay. I love your sketch page, by the way. This is sick. So you're thinking about the whole world building, you're thinking about all this cool stuff, the materials you're pulling from, the look of the fire you want. I love how dramatized it is. Your ship design here, your ideas for the ship design. I love your rough sketch. This sketch for the ship design, this rules, dude. This is sick. This is like actually fire, dude. Like actually. Like I would stay as close to this as possible. I actually think you lost a ton of the energy in this version versus this. This is way sleeker. This is, and I'll tell you why. The reason why this is so sleek is you have these big relationships with shape. Like this whole snaking line here is awesome. These kind of compounding elements here, stacking up, flaring back. This part curving, coming from the bottom, seeing it on the underside. It's a great shape relationship. Looks really cool. This looks so dope. And then in your version here, like everything died. I don't want to like rip on you too hard, but it's like everything died. Like this lost its energy. It goes down now. There's no clear shape relationship here. This whole thing is gone. This whole midsection here got super busy. Because what was one piece here that you had, you made it into like 1, 2, potentially 3 pieces of different things to be worried about. Maybe. This nice kind of closed silhouette you had here got kind of flattened, I think. Flattened out. This extended maybe a bit too far too. Yeah, this whole thing like sticking out of the edge, I really preferred this shape a lot more. Dude, this happens all the time where people make a sick rough sketch and they go to refine it and then just like kill all the energy. As somebody who is an energy murderer myself, I do that all the time, man. I think this is such a sick rough sketch. This is the highlight for me so far, is this airship design from this project. This one sketch is what I like the most right now. How funny is that? Yeah, you're exploring the look of the shop he has. I like that you're taking references from things that you've seen, real references from life, cool stuff you've seen. And for the anthropomorphic character, you're pulling real references. This is great for expression, really great for expression and details and stuff. This is awesome. Fellow energy murderer, totally. Totally. Yeah, you've got all the shapes out, your cat skull shapes, nice. And your sketches here. This design has a lot of attitude. The crossed arms looks really cool. The swords coming at from this side look really cool. You have that cool kind of like hat doing, the hat's doing this. Like the arms are kind of doing this a little bit. The swords are doing this. The tail's doing this. It's really nice. And even this is kind of like opening up, holding the design in place. These rough sketches are really good, man. Do you find that you have problems like going from your rough sketches to your final drawing? Because it feels like they get really stiff. Like this feels a million times more stiff, and this feels a million times more stiff than your rough sketches. And I'll kind of show you back and forth how like the energy here is awesome and the gesture is awesome. And then I feel like the gesture just gets lost. Even things like the leg going it's going like forward. Hello, where's my brush? Oh, here we go. It's going forward, back, forward. And in your final version, like you've lost all of it. It's going like somewhat forward, flat, tiny bit back, flat, forward a little bit, and then kind of awkwardly in space. I think, dude, I think your rough sketches are really strong here, and your final outcomes are like very, very stiff in comparison. So I know you can draw really loose and like well gestured here, but that's something that you need to really think about, is how are you going to approach line art in a way that doesn't kill the energy, right? Oh, interesting. I struggle with finding design as I change maybe too much to make it look anatomically accurate. Dude, it's very rare that we actually improve when we try to make things anatomically accurate. Most art that you like is anatomically inaccurate. And I'm talking from the pros, dude. Most of it's not accurate, you know? It just gives the impression of accuracy. Let's keep looking here. I like, yeah. So the 3D block out for the ship, I think it's useful as a reference piece for the future when you want to reposition it in many different complex forms. But I think with how simple this is, I don't know if you need the 3D block out as much. Because again, here it like adds a lot of extra noise that maybe you don't need. Maybe isn't like relevant to the design. But I like that you're doing the airship. The airship looks dope as hell, bro. Airships are so sick. And in your reference thing here, where you're focusing on him as kind of a shopkeeper and he's doing his thing, I love your traditional sketches. You're thinking about his traditional stuff. That's great. Putting him in context, doing a cool gesture sketch. Love this gesture sketch. This looks dope. Looks dope. Dude, come on, man. You got to be more loose with your finals. You can't keep You can't keep, because if you do this for real and you make it super stiff, I'm gonna be pissed. It looks dope. But yeah, this is cool. This is good. This is good sketch information. Good stuff. Showcasing it in 3D space, which is nice. Yeah, your page here for the body is fine. Like, you're placing things out. You're trying different costume iterations. There's kind of like a less is more kind of approach where it could be that rather than trying things more, rather than trying many complex things all at once, really thinking about who the character is, which I know you're doing anyway, and focusing and thinking more along the lines of, how can I best showcase this character? What would they be wearing? And all of that stuff. Having that thought could be the move, because some of these ideas are a little, like, it's almost needlessly repetitive. Like, some of the motifs are so similar and repetitious, or so in the same kind of camp. I feel like maybe you don't need as much iteration in this specific area as you might think. And that might be part of the issue of feeling like you're stiffening up, like it's almost overdoing certain things. Because I feel like a lot of these different elements you could explore. No, I mean, if it's your process and it works for you, then you should do it. That's the thing, is if it's your process and it works for you, you should do it. If you feel like it's slowing you down, or you feel like it's not feeling good and you feel like you're doing it because you have to, then maybe think about adjusting. But I'm not going to shut down your process if it actually works for you. Yeah, cat guy looks cool. And then the last page here where you're focusing on your designs for all the different main costumes. I like this page. This page is good. For purpose of presentation, I mean, I know it's like pure F document, right? Or you're just kind of screenshotting stuff. It's not an actual presentation. So yeah, I guess I'm not going to critique the presentation since it's just the info here. But Toko's Pyromaniac Pass. So used to be a pyromaniac. Fun backstory for a chef. Love it. Got the Molotov, got the knife, got the flaming fists. I like your rendering here and your treatment of the forms and stuff. It looks good. Looks good. The drawings here, the costume, feeling a little flat. The drawing feels a little bit flat, but these areas look good form-wise. They look good. The main body looks pretty flat for all the reasons I said before. Like, I'm not going to give the same critique a million times over and over for the same thing. But yeah, like the follow through and even stuff like this, like having the follow through, I can't tell you guys how important it is of having these forms go all the way around. Wrapping all the way around is like just so huge. Here you have it, which is great. Good job. Yeah, and then how you're designing the musculature. If you're really stressed out about the musculature, it's probably worth spending some extended time figuring out your shorthand for that so that it's not such an issue when you go to refine or finish things. Like doing more quick anatomy drills might be the answer to being less stiff when you're actually doing the designs, right? Here's the base outfit. Here's his chef outfit. I like it. It's dope. It's cool. There's one thing I'll say, which is that the overall silhouette for this character is cool. If we're talking purely off the basis of anthropomorphization, because like I actually have a ton of experience with anthro characters in particular, not necessarily in the modern style, which is more towards the kind of like the furry proportions or the other proportions, but more so like actually having the animals just act like people, because that's true anthropomorphization, when the animal is exactly the same anatomically but is just acting like a person. Big cats like this, they have longer torsos and they have shorter legs and they have shorter arms. You don't have to change the proportions of your character because you're designing them. This is a sci-fi world. You can have them look however you want. But you could try a version where maybe the character is a little bit more, a little bit taller in a way, with potentially a little bit more of those kind of cat-like proportions where, and again, this is really, really up to taste, to be honest. Where you have that more longer torso and the slightly shorter arms. so that you can have, again, that more kind of cat-like look. But that's like an appeal thing, and it's only if you want to do that. But I would just kind of recommend it a little bit as something to try potentially. Yeah, I always think the anthropomorphization stuff looks better when it's referencing a little bit closer to the actual animal's anatomy and proportions rather than going so humanoid. But again, it's up to you. And it's a taste thing as well. So I'm not going to project that or anything. Just going to say it for myself just because I wanted to say it. Yeah, costuming looks good. So world building wise, I love your approach. You're thinking about a character with a dark past who has a modern present. They have a vocation. You've thought about their vocation. You thought about all that stuff. It's looking great. It's looking cool. Yeah, dude. Nice submission. I love the airship, man. I want you to work on the airship more and try and save the energy. The things to consider for you, I think definitely consider how you're finishing your pieces and developing a process that is, it's not going to kill the energy every time. The best way to do that is repetition. So a lot of people sketch a lot, but they don't actually finish a lot of stuff. Or when they finish something, it takes them like a month to finish. So if you give yourself like 45 minutes to say, start to finish, you know, make an idea, finish it with polished line art and everything done, and you do that once a day, you'll get really good at finishing stuff really quickly. So doing that repetition, not just of drawing in general, but specifically the areas of the process that you struggle with the most, by tackling that again and again, you're going to get a lot more comfortable with it and not feel so stuck or stiff. But great work, Alex. Awesome. Finally, we have Finn. I love this, dude. This is so sick. So I have your kind of first submission that you put in the thing, and then you put in a little extended version where you did some more ideas and wrapped up some more. So let's look at the first submission. Looking cool. So first of all, this is sick, dude. Like, this is all sick. I really like this. I really like all these little guys. They're so cool. The thing that I was really drawn to immediately was I just could tell instantly it was a moth motif. Could tell instantly. Like, these are moth guys. These are moth people. Moth people with moth stuff. They've got moth things, doing moth stuff. And when I look closely, I'm like, oh, they're all wearing moth masks. So they're not like moth alien creatures. They're people who wear moth masks. That's so sick. So then I can see in your first submission, you were exploring all these ideas where you have a cool lamp that's attracting the little moths. You have a guy with a little moth torch. You have a guy with a little moth, like a almost anglerfish style guy. And you have this cool posed character, another moth torch guy and a thing. And I can tell you're kind of thinking through these ideas, trying out different silhouettes and different approaches. In your final submission, I see you kind of took some of these ideas you were thinking about and brought them to life even more. So because this is so dope, I'm going to critique you pretty harshly, dude. I'm not going to lie. But baseline, this is awesome. I really like this. It made me really, really excited when I saw this. First of all, Silksong Enjoyer. I see you, brother. I see you. I love the bells. I love the moths. It's awesome. The vibes are cool. So for something like this, some standout examples of ideas here are going to be ideas like this guy. This guy is super awesome. Let me find the right thing here. Where are we? Yeah, this guy, I think right here is definitely a winner in terms of designs. I like that there is a like tube motif coming from the mouth, very bug kind of tube motif. But this is, I think, definitely a winner because he's got this cool lamp design that is also kind of attracting these bugs, but he's a very kind of like a sentry sort of like looking like a watchful kind of character, standing guard almost. I think that other characters in a similar ilk that are just kind of standing with the moth hat and the torch, it feels like there's not as much harmony in these designs, but that's okay because you're looking for the good ideas. You're trying things out, looking for the good ideas that are really going to land and really going to hit big. And that's the main focus of iteration like this. When you're doing iteration like this and you're trying out a bunch of stuff, you're looking for those golden ideas. So stuff like this with this guy, I think it's cool. You know, he's pulling this epic, sick kite thing. It looks almost like a dragonfly. Maybe that was a reference. That's kind of cool. Fortunately, big missed opportunity. It could have been that it was, instead of him pulling it, he could be flying a kite. The kite could have like a little orb source of light on it, like everything else has a source of light. And it could be that it's kind of like a calling card for people to see, and you could have done it in the style of a big moth or multiple moths in a row, as if they're chasing the flame. Like, you could have done that. You could have had them chasing the flame. You could have had the motif of what moths are like in the design on the kite. Unfortunately, we didn't see it on the day. That's okay. It happens. I'm like mostly joking there. It's still sick. It's still a cool design coming forward and very dynamic and cool, but you can consider, again, like keeping those elements of what you already have narratively of a moth to the flame. What could this kite be used for? It could be kind of like an indication or something, and they're pulling something along in the sky, and it could be moths following it. Like, that could be kind of interesting. The ratio of shape here is a little bit off. So the little bells coming out here, oftentimes we talk about the idea of big, medium, and small. And for something like this, the ratio of shapes is a little off. It's too much clutter of small shapes next to shapes that are not clearly medium or big, and they're not organized in a way that is actually useful to the viewer to understand. So what does that mean? When you have a lot of asymmetry, or you have repeating patterns that are not conforming to regular, like if you have a repeating pattern, or you have a pattern that is repeating regularly, it is grouped as one thing, and it doesn't stress out the viewer. A key example is this. These are many small shapes, but they are in a uniform pattern going in a certain direction. They're not calling attention. They're not screaming at you, pulling your eyes in. Whereas these ones that are kind of all over the place, stacked in front, I know it's not your intention, but it's a little bit stressful for the viewer, like just a little bit. So if we follow the movement of the character and the gesture, they're pulling this way, we can consider that the bells are also subject to gravity, and you could have them all coming out from one direction. That could decrease the amount of like stressful feelings that the shapes might induce. Also, little details like that are probably not necessary in this case. So something like this could be the move, potentially, so that they're flaring out in a way that is kind of repeatable and visible. Or, and this is my personal favorite, or my personal view of this, is just to like cut it, probably. I don't think the bells there are very necessary, and I think they're especially when you have such a cool dynamic prop, you don't really want your guy to be too busy. And that can be said for a lot of these little kind of tertiary designs, like the little bells there, or even the ones coming off of the belt, or even the ones down here. I would consider cutting these, mostly because they're such a stark contrast, but they're not significant enough to have that kind of calmness. So examples of where something like that works, for instance, is maybe here, where these are dangling off of the hood here. The reason why this works is because ratio-wise, this is the same width as this, and the same width as like this corner edge and this pipe thing here. So it's consistent with the other small shapes in the piece. So it's not like out of place, and it's also stacked in a way that isn't like causing a problem. There's no kind of tangent here. It's very evenly splitting these very simple shapes. And this one here is free floating in a place of calm. So these particular things aren't distracting as much. The same is true for this one over here. This is so big. This is like an accent piece. This big bell here is actually a key example of like the perfect way to do this, where you have a big motif that has a lot of visual presence and it looks really good. And even the bells down here, it's almost like a ring of keys. I love that like idea and reference that they use keys, their bells as keys. You could even use this as an opportunity to pull focus to this prop down here with a bit of a specular highlight. But in the similar fashion, these ones are not doing us any favors and they're causing more harm than good. Just cutting them really helps the design. You can still have like a cross contour line going through. You can still kind of have like a stitching thing there, but cutting the bells there, I think is the move for sure. The one in the front, I'll let you decide whether you kind of like that or whether it's a bit, you know, yay or nay. One thing I'll say is that there's a lot going on. You've got the bugs in the anglerfish trap. He's looking at him. Sort of like why? Sort of kind of why? Like maybe. One gesture would fix this. One gesture would fix this instantly, which is one kind of hand in the air and he's holding up his hand. That fixes this whole thing. And if this hand is either at his side or doing something else, or maybe like in a pocket or something, or in a pouch, or maybe reaching up a little bit too, that fixes the whole thing because it adds narrative and purpose to what's going on here. You don't have to fully understand, but it brings it all together in a way that I think makes it work personally. The bells on the belly, I think they look cool. Maybe that's a motif that would succeed more if it had more purpose, narrative purpose. You might know the narrative purpose, I might not, but it might fit more with a character that has less going on overall. You know, working backwards is kind of inefficient because I'm going towards your first take on some of these ideas, so it's not as high yield for me to critique these as much. But I like that you're trying things. I like that you're trying stuff out. Funky hat thing. Loves the bugs. You know, this guy, ironically, I think works really well. I think having these, again, symmetry, repeating patterns, and not in a high contrast area, or not disrupting a high contrast area. These bells really work, and they work well to bring emphasis to the face too. I love this buckle here. This buckle looks good. If you're gonna do this, then you gotta have the other side also be brassy too. Weirdly, you really need to show that for some reason. So working to the right now from the left, from what I think is one of the stronger designs here, going to the right, the other, as we kind of go down the line here, I can tell you're getting more experimental, but also potentially losing some of the focus of what you're trying to go for potentially. So the capelet thing here, as it's kind of flowing forward and flowing off to the side, I love the silhouette. I love this silhouette. I love this. Oh, is je ne sais quoi, beauty. Mwah. Very nice. I love whatever this thing is, some kind of tool. It looks like kind of like a bong, like he's gonna ping something or pang something. I don't quite know what's going on. The bells on the little flurry bits, I do like. I think they're cool. This guy, honestly, he's too weird. I think to make the head work, this head, I don't think this works for a short, stubby character. I think if we even did something like just kind of calm this down to give him more the slit eye approach, and we actually just like cut the bells, it would kind of let this guy actually like be kind of cool. I mean, I'm tempted to just make him taller, to be honest. Oh, oops. Tempted to make him taller. Mind you, temptation is everywhere. But I'm tempted to make him taller. I'm not saying that's the right call, but I'm tempted. But I do like him. I think he's cool. I think he's dope. Yeah, and I mean, you know, it's not bad. Not bad at all. But I think there's a lot of cool elements here that are kind of wasted on an incongruent character, potentially. So I think keep a lot of these motifs in mind. This kind of scrolling cape that's like coming forward. This element that's coming forward here, flaring up, pringling, showing up on the other side of the face, I think is really cool. This, whatever this is really cool. I like how it's placed. Yeah, it's dope. This character is interesting. I like that she's pointing at me. I'm very uncomfortable. This one almost feels like it's representing like Japanese dress a little too much, based on what you already have. But we ball. Do it anyway. Who cares? Yeah, this one I think the bells are working. I think these bells need to be bigger. Personally. Yeah, the ratio of the bells, dude. You got to get the ratio right. So I think for you, the thing to think about is big, medium, small, particularly with accent details. Like, you got to think about that. Ooh, great example is these little bells on the feet here. These are perfect. I didn't even notice them. Great ratio. Not distracting. Great accent pieces. They're good. They're small enough that they're good. And they work well with what's around them. That's good. Yeah, the idea, I have no idea what this character's about, but I like how freaky they are, so I'm just gonna let it go. This one, it's all right. I like, honestly, looking at your rough sketch, you know, you're thinking about this little guy in the back, and you got such a cool shape here, and the cool gesture, like he's hunched over, he's looking, he's like, meh. And then this little kid in his little circular thing, and they're tiny. That's like such a great ratio. You have a big shape, little guy on a guy, cool cape that's tying the whole silhouette together. And then I see how you execute it. I see the actual outcome, and it's like everything you were working towards is gone. You stack all the detail right here, loses all of the essence. I can barely tell what the gesture is doing. The big shape that you had with the little guy is gone. We have a lot of details. I do like the cage thing. It's kind of interesting, but him holding on with like cables, like I just don't see how that. What does that do? Maybe it traps the child. Trap the child. But yeah, I think you definitely lost out on some of the cool gesture information and stuff you had in the original sketch. So that's like just something to remember, you know. Oh wait, this guy rules. This short guy rules. Oh, dude, we got another one. Another cool sketch ruiner. You're keep ruining your cool sketches, dude. Come on, man. Why do you gotta change everything, man? Why do you gotta change everything? Come on. Really? Yeesh. This last guy's dope. Love the last guy. He was what I was drawn to earlier. Specifically because the glowing moth on the hand is such a powerful visual. This guy feels like a leader, feels super cool. I love all of these shapes bursting out and exploding out. The bells on the front are cool. These nice shapes kind of flowing in, and then this flowing out is a nice contrast. I like it. This one is like you could almost go out on both sides for the cape. You don't have to pull it in on this side. You can kind of have it be on wide on both sides, and it would work really well for the gravitas of the character. However, this is so much cooler, dude. This is so cool. Come on. Come on. Gosh. Well, great work. Love the work. And everyone, I think, did really cool ideas and tried really cool stuff and really pushed themselves hard. I'm really proud of everyone who participated in this and who actually submitted the assignment. It wasn't necessary to submit the assignment. It was an optional thing. And initially, I wasn't going to go so long. I can't believe it's been... How long have we been going for? Good God. 3 hours of straight critique. Oh, gosh. Well, you guys rule. Really, really proud of you guys. Well done and good work. To close out, I will remind everybody once again, class time. We're doing classes. We have the free class, the free workshop tomorrow and Sunday, 16th, 17th. Show up. If not, just sign up so you get the recordings before they go behind a paywall. Again, by the way, the reason it's free is because it was my birthday this month. Happy birthday to me. My gift is a free workshop to you. And seriously, guys, you got to read and check out the Worldbuilding Design Bootcamp, 10 weeks long, from June until August 2026. This is going to be a game changer. Game changer for anybody who's interested in world building, whether you want to go more in the illustration route, concept art, even for like comic designers. Like, it's going to be the thing, the one. Definitely consider it and read through it for sure. So link for that in the description and in the comments. You can check it out. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for submitting these assignments, guys. It was super fun to go through and see all your cool ideas. Really proud of all of you, and can't wait to see what you guys make for the World Building 10-week boot camp. I'm so excited to see what you make because the assignments are bomb. All right, with that, we are going to sign off. We're going to peace out. Much love to everybody, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Alrighty. Peace out, guys. See you later.